Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Ceremonial Witch, or Corey LeBlanc, whatever one you want to call me. I don't really care what you call me. How's it going, everybody? Well, happy fucking Saturn Day to all. I'm happy to report that so far I haven't gotten a fight with my wife. So I don't want to turn this fucking podcast or channel into some fucking drama between me and my wife. Although I know people do like hearing about drama and watching drama, especially if they don't have it in their own life. And it's very appealing to people, but it's also not going to serve anybody to focus on anybody's or their own drama, unless it's to fucking fix and heal their own drama. But I kind of realized that, my last few episodes are about me fighting my wife, and I'm trying to extract a fucking message. But, yeah, so anyways, but I did want to say that so far so good. 12:25 and no fights in sight. Now, we had a nice, beautiful night alone last night, shopping in the nation's capital, Ottawa, which is about an hour and a half away from my little hometown. Christmas shopping, of course. We went to an indoor light thing, kind of like if you've ever been to Upper Canada, a night at light, or any of these places where they have an abundance of Christmas lights, and it looks fantastic, and it puts you kind of in that Christmas spirit, which is something I want to talk about after. But it's kind of like that, but it was all indoor. So instead of having the urgency and walking fast because it's cold outside or having to go in somewhere to warm up, you're already inside. So, which had its pros and its cons. You're able to walk around and not freeze or even have your coat on and, take pictures without, the dark and the flash and all that shit. But and it was a fairly big enough room, and they had quite a bit, but because you don't have that urgency, the cold and all that, you don't kind of go through it pretty quick, and, whenever you've seen everything, you can do it in like less than an hour because of the lack of cold and having to walk around and stop in pictures and take your gloves off, put them back on, all that shit. So because of that, you do it pretty fast, and you're kind of like, well, I thought it would have been bigger. But in retrospect, it's probably about the same size. It's just because you're not outside in the cold dealing with the elements. Something to that effect anyways. But, so yeah, we did that. We went shopping, came home, bought our bed downstairs, watched another Christmas movie together as I, took vitamins and drank beer. What a combo. And, I literally only had one beer and one shot of fucking rum, but it is what it is. So, anyways, yeah, we had a great night, and now today is the continuation of that, and we're still shopping, and it's awesome. God, I hate shopping. But anyways, and I've always hated shopping, even prior to me becoming enlightened, not enlightened, but you know what I mean, this awakening process, consciousness, blah, 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 blah. So anyways, but what I want to talk about today is a few things, and the first is the microcosmic-orbit. Now, I had a video prior, and it was about egregores, but the main theme was learning how to make your egregores, the process, the checklist, and it was also how to do the microcosmic orbit to channel energy into your egregore, because your microcosmic orbit, it's a little more, it hits more energy centers of the body, because the system, the chakra system that we all know and love, and the middle pillar that we use, it hits those more or less, all of them. It kind of leaves out a few, but the fact that you're bringing an energy beam down, you're going to hit those centers regardless. But the way the microcosmic orbit, it's almost as if you're the sun, and the energy from you, that's coming into you, because when you do your middle pillar, you're visualizing the energy coming down through your crown and then hitting all these energy centers, which is awesome. And it's going kind of from top to bottom, and people visualize it going through them. Whereas the microcosmic orbit is something that goes around you. It's an energy field that's around your body. And through various different things that you do during the microcosmic orbit, such as putting your tongue to the roof of your mouth, which has always been an essential part of meditations and different things like that. Because generally the same energy that the microcosmic orbit, which would be your ki or your chi, depending on, what Asian nationality you are. It's called different things, prana, chi, ki, Qui-GONG or Qui-GONG is the same practice of It's all the same thing, practice, energy you're trying to move around your body is what it is. So basically the reason I'm bringing this up is because this week, again, while I was on the overnight shift at my job, it was very hard to get any sleep. Before my Sunday shift, I got to about a couple hours, and then no sleep for my Monday night shift, and then before my Tuesday night shift, which is kind of like Wednesday, once again, about an hour before, which is more like a meditation I did, and I was pretty tired, and then I ended up not making it into work on the Thursday due, the Wednesday night, which would be like my Thursday shift, but I ended up not making it in because of a couple of things, dehydration, among other things. So as much as meditation can help you, feel more rejuvenated in your body, if you're still not doing things like drinking enough water and all this, then, the meditation can only do so much. So it got me into the job and got me into work and all that, but I ended up missing another day because I actually fell asleep. And then when I woke up, I was an hour and a half late. Sorry, 2 hours, no, an hour and 15 minutes late. And then when I went to go in, I started getting these Charlie horse cramps. And I know I've had this before, and, I'm preaching to everybody here to take care of themselves and all this. And yet I'm not doing the same. So, but this is just this week. It's been a very busy couple of weeks with Christmas shopping and all the things to do, and then not getting enough sleep and all that. And of course, if I'm not getting enough sleep, there's a good chance I'm not getting enough water in my system and all that. So I'm happy to say I rectified all that, and I feel a million times better. This is why everybody should be putting some kind of mineral in their water, or drinking mineral water, whatever the case is. This is why I add salt to my water. I add a pinch of Himalayan sea salt, because not only is it making electrolytes and making it a high alkaline substance to put in your body, which promotes healing and everything else, but it hydrates your body faster. There's a reason you have to drink 10 cups of water a day to stay hydrated, and it's because if your water doesn't have any minerals in it, then your body's not going to keep it. That's why when you drink water fast, you piss it out so fast. But when I drink water that has alkaline, making an alkaline water, whether it's lemon, whether it's salt, which salt and lemon are both debated, but I'm telling you right now, I don't know about the lemon, but I do it too. But I know 100% about the salts, and the salt works. And, I can drink 4 water bottles of that. And yeah, I'm going to go to the bathroom, but not as much. It's kind of the equivalent of eating too much protein or eating too much meat or whatever the case is. You're going to have to go to the bathroom pretty fast, and it's because none of that got retained by your body. So anyways, there's a couple simple tricks that I do whenever I'm feeling dehydrated to hydrate my body fast. Unfortunately, I hadn't done that in a while to keep myself hydrated, and that's what happened, and I ended up missing a day of work. But normally, if you take a piece of, if you can do this, if you take Himalayan pink sea salt, and now apparently Celtic salt has even more minerals in it than pink Himalayan sea salt. However, I've never seen Celtic salt before. I don't know what it looks like. I've never had it. So around here we have a lot of pink Himalayan sea salt. Obviously a lot of sea salt, pink Himalayan salt, not sea salt, but we have a lot of sea salt here as well. But anyways, you take a couple pieces of the pink Himalayan sea salt, or pink Himalayan salt, chunks preferably, but if all you have is the dust or the coarse stuff or the small fine stuff, then whatever, you just take a bunch of that there, whatever you think would be the equivalent of 2 of the little small pieces of like rocks, the little chunks. You would take that and then you put that in your mouth and let it create, your mouth would make a lot of saliva and stuff like that, and then you take a sip of water with that. And then, you kind of wish that around your mouth first, kind of like Edward Cayce is saying, chew your water. And all he meant by that was like wish it around your mouth a little bit and let saliva get in it, because that starts the digestive system process. So you do that with the pink Himalayan sea salt and then the water. I actually use pink Himalayan sea salt in the same water as well that I'm drinking. And that normally does the trick. If I'm getting cramps in my legs over and over and over and over and over again, okay, unstoppably, and I've had this before, and that's one of the main signs that tells me that I'm getting dehydrated. That's how my body talks to me. Then when I do this, it stops within, I don't know, it's not instantaneously, right? Because it takes a while for the effect to get down, tell the nervous system, blah, 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 hydration's on the way, whatever. But as soon as it does, it's over with. So I want to say about 5 minutes, maybe even less. It happens, and I'm good. So that's a little bit of a side note of what happened to me on my Thursday shift or my Wednesday shift. But when I returned to work, okay, my last shift of the week was Friday, okay, because I missed my Thursday shift. So when I returned to work, I was feeling all kinds of anxious and anxiety because I missed a day, and I left somebody alone because by the time I called in, it was late. I was by the time they knew I wasn't coming in. Sorry, it was late because I was already an hour and 15 late, and I never made it in. So it wasn't like I was able to call 3 hours prior. It was like super late. Anyways, point is, sorry. All right, so all that being said, the reason I was a little anxious, well, that's the reason I was a little anxious, because I left somebody kind of stranded there, and I didn't need two people to be there. I think with only one person there, they can't run. And being that I enjoy this job, like this job, and it's still a job, just over broke, as Infinite Waters would say. But because of the fact that this is one of my intrinsic fears of, because over the last few years I've been listening to, whether it's propaganda or not, or truth or not, the fact that, people are all slaves working for jobs that they don't like, pay for stuff that, they're impulsively buying, and that they don't need, like a house and all this shit, whatever. Because I've been listening to that, I actually started believing in that. I created that program, that belief system. And like I said before, I had to face that belief system. So I had to go back into that field and face it head first and realize that that's not what it is. It's not for me anymore. That could be someone else's truth, but it's no longer my truth. I'm doing this for me, for my family. It's the responsibility I need to take on. And at least until my wife understands or knows that, magic can be real or is real, or whatever the case is, or to at the very least, trust me enough in my beliefs, because she's always allowed me to have my beliefs without judgment, for the most part anyways, I think. But she hasn't always been able to just let it be and not think about, well, he says not to worry about the money coming in, but how the fuck am I supposed to not worry about the money coming in? Because if it doesn't come in, we're going to lose our house, blah, 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 blah. And and that's reasonable. I can't expect her to not do that whenever she doesn't understand what I know, because she's not looking into it, because it's not something that appeals to her. And she doesn't have to like what I like. She doesn't have to look into what I have to look into. But in the same sense, if I choose to stay with her, which I am, because I don't want to be with anybody else but her, but when I choose to stay with her, well, that means I have to sacrifice possibly the thought of me being able to stay home. Right now I'm 33 years old. So if I'm going to need to stay home in 10 years or 20 years, then, so be it. I'll be able to stay home then. Right now, working is not a big deal to me, because I can work with my eyes closed. It's not a burden to me. I'm a very good, hard, efficient worker. So to deprive that gift from, other businesses, well, that's maybe selfish of me, but the point is, I don't really care. It's not a hard thing for me to work. The thing I cared about the most was leaving my daughter. But understand that there may be or have been a unhealthy attachment issue I have right there with my daughter that also is going to be fixed and rectified by me going back to work. So not only am I facing a fear by going back to work, not only am I going to be able to manifest money plus have the money from the job coming in, I'm also going to be able to reduce my my attachment issue with my daughter and me not wanting to leave her. So there's multiple areas where just me going back into the workforce had fixed. So whenever I don't think I put it at risk, because this is like the first time I've done this, but still it could be argued a probationary period, missing time could be, a reason to not hire me or, be able to let me go before the 3 months is over without any penalty, because that's what your probationary period is. You can be let go without penalty to the company. They have 3 months to try you out. And if they decide you're a fit, well, then now you get the protection from the labor board and all their labor laws. But anyway, so all that being said, I did the microcosmic orbit before going into work that night. And I did it in a different way that I've never done it before. I found something on YouTube that explains it very well. And not that Mantiak, fuck is his last name? The guy who wrote the book, and I don't know if he developed the microcosmic orbit himself. I'm pretty sure it was a tradition within his tradition that he just explained and put in a book for the world to know. But Mantak, I can't remember his name, sorry, but anyways, he explained it very well, but he tells you to take your time doing it, and over the course of 7 days or whatever, you kind of do it differently and all that, and that's the way I do it when I do my egregore stuff, or my servitor thought form stuff. But this the way this meditation was on YouTube, the diagrams and all that. I'm actually going to play this for you. So if you guys want to do it, you can totally do it, or at least close your eyes and listen to what he says to do, and whatever. That's going to be the last hour of this show. So if you don't want to listen to that, well, after the fucking 2-hour mark or whatever the case is, then just shut it off. But point is, it was very beneficial. Dylan, this is a ritual that does the same thing more or less as your middle pillar, but because the microcosmic orbit touches more centers than just your 7 chakras, because what your body actually has, right? Your 7 chakras are a mixture of some chakras that are in the front, some chakras that are in the back, right? But your crown and your root, generally people think of as like your bottom and your top, but there are some that are in the back and some that are in the front, and together I want to say there's either 12 or 14 around your entire body. Okay, now this one actually touches the one below your feet and then comes up to the front, and then the back of the root ones goes around your body. But in essence, what happens is whenever you're not doing the microcosmic orbit, or you're just talking or doing your day-to-day stuff, there's energy, whether you want to call it chi, prana, ki, whatever you want to call it, okay? There's this energy force coming down to you, and it circles around you to try to hit your energy centers, okay? But what happens is it'll come around from the back, and then come up from below your feet and then come up to your front. But what happens is when it gets to your mouth, instead of going over your head and continuously hitting around your energy centers, the ones outside of the body, it actually goes within your body, inside your mouth. So it ends up looking like almost like a yin-yang symbol, because, if you were to go make a picture of a circle, right, you come from the top, and you're going from left to right, and you're going like a circle down, and you come up, and then you go inside the person's body, and then it comes back around and out through that mouth. So it ends up looking like a yin-yang symbol, which is very, very profound. And I'll put the links for this and certain videos that show this for you guys, so you can actually see it instead of me just describing it. But by putting your tongue to the roof of your mouth during any kind of meditation is super helpful, and you'll feel, at least after a few sessions anyways, but I felt it right off the hop. But you will feel of the boost of energy around you, circling you. So when you put your mouth to the top of your roof, the roof of your mouth, when you put your tongue to the roof of your mouth, instead of the energy going within you and taking longer to come back out of you to hit the rest of the energy centers, okay, you're closing that hole so that energy continuously circles around you, okay, hitting those energy centers more times more quickly. Therefore, it can heal your body faster, make you more energized faster, feel better, make you less anxious, all the benefits. Because this is going to happen regardless. But with your mouth open, it takes longer because it doesn't hit those energy centers when it goes within you. But it does when it comes out of you. Now, this is the way they think about it. I'll leave that up to you if you want to believe it or not. I don't care. All I know is if you do this and you visualize it the way, they tell you to visualize it, or at least in a way that you see the energy and you controlling the energy and you move in that energy certain ways and whatever, you're Dantian or Danishan, whatever you want to call it. It's a place that's kind of like where your stomach may be, or your lower abdomen, okay? But it's a place inside you where prana or chi or ki is, it's a very important part of this process. And so to know that, the book QI-GONG and how to use it or something like that, I put the link on here a long time ago, and I'll try to do it again. But it really explains this very, very, very well, breathing techniques and how to do this process. But anyways, so I did that before going to work, and I wasn't able to sleep after I did that. I was so energized and felt so great, and I went in there, and everybody was absolutely positively nice to me, and not, and that could just be fake, but I generally know when someone's being fake, and I wasn't getting that vibration. But point is, it helped absolutely substantially. It was absolutely amazing how much the microcosmic orbit helped that process. So that's something I think everybody should try, as at least a small version of it that I've found on YouTube. I'll play it, and I'll leave the link in the description also for it, so you guys can watch it at your own pace. But at least if you have it recorded, if you never have let's say you download this episode and you never have Wi-Fi somewhere, and you want to know how to do this again, right? You're bored, you're sitting somewhere, you have nothing else to do. Well, you fast forward this episode to where I play this, and then boom, you can do the microcosmic orbit anywhere or go to sleep to it. So that's kind of the point of why when I put these things on my page is so anybody who doesn't have Wi-Fi, if they need to hear the information again, whether it's from my mouth or from the people's mouths I put on here, they can download it. So when I play a YouTube clip, it's only the audio. So this is why I try not to offend anybody, especially like people that I consider mentors or people that helped me. This way it's not their video. If someone wants to see the video, they have to go to YouTube. But if they need to just hear the audio and hear procedures to do something when they don't have their Wi-Fi or they don't have data, well then they can go to my downloaded episodes and find whatever episode that I said something in. If they have it downloaded in there, they can go back to it and do it. And that's the main purpose. It's not for me to get more downloads, to make any money, this, that, and the other thing. That's just there so I can keep making these episodes, so I never have to pay for the time that I use every month. And I'll have to pay Spreaker $20 a month basically to have my package to deliver these messages to you. So I have the ads and stuff on there just so it pays for itself basically. But anyways, but now that it's going to be on an episode, and on an episode for good, as long as you download this episode or any of the other episodes that I've had, anything else equivalent on that you want, then you're going to have it for good, basically. And anytime you need to use it, you don't even have to use Wi-Fi, you can use it. But if you do have Wi-Fi and you want to show somebody else, well, you can just go to my episode and click the link and show them the actual video. So to me, it doesn't matter which way you prefer or pick, you can just do either one. So that's something I want to play and show for you guys shortly. But first I want to talk about a few more things before I get into anything else. Alright, hello, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Well, so I started recording, as you probably already heard. I recorded some of this on Saturday. Actually even it's on yesterday, but I didn't make a note of it. And now today is Monday, so yeah, me and my wife haven't fought all weekend. Woohoo! How awesome is that? But anyways, more importantly, before I continue and I start going into Peterson versus Brand, this is Russell Brand versus Jordan Peterson, and what I want to hit on here is identifying the self, fixing the self, the identity that, in most occult and New Age circles that we're told we have to lose your identity. Why do I promote Jordan Peterson, and where Jordan Peterson promotes focusing more on the identity and all this? And so that's something I want to get into after because I just went through the microcosmic orbit, and you're going to hear the microcosmic orbit, the meditation that I think works really great as long as you have a good imagination and you can go along with what it's saying. Now, if you watch the video, there's not much more. It shows you the picture at the beginning, and the same picture I put in as my picture for this episode is that same picture he shows on the video, more or less. So there's not much more you're going to get from the YouTube video than you will from this. However, it doesn't matter if you want to look at that to see if there is something better or it's easier represented. Anyways, by all means, like I said, I was just putting this on here so that if you downloaded this and you're somewhere and you're bored, you have time to meditate, and you've already downloaded my episode, well, then you can put it back on and you don't have to, it's not going to cost you Wi-Fi or data or any of that shit. Before I get into that, I was a big punk rock fan and stuff like that growing up in high school. And then in my years of and I've always liked rap music all along as a kid. I used to go back and forth from rap to punk, to rap to metal, rap to death metal, rap to punk. Always. Rap was like, the choice of music I really enjoyed, but I didn't really want to, say it in front of friends because all my friends were, of the punk rebellious type people. Now, once I got into the criminal activity part of my life, obviously it was okay to listen to rap and be okay with it. So, but, as Fred or Xavier or other people say, you don't have to look far into communities where, rap music is predominant, especially the rap about doing drugs, selling drugs, being a criminal. You see it, people that listen to this music end up doing what the music says, and it's not a matter of blaming the music or blaming, is it the chicken and the egg? Is it the rap music that comes first and makes people do these things, or these people do things, then they listen to the rap music, and it's irrelevant. What is important is that what you listen to will bring you closer or make you do what is being said. So I try to stay away from it as much as possible. Specific songs, no, not that I don't have things in place to protect me from what I'm hearing or seeing. And when you actually know that this stuff can cause harm to you, and you listen to like 432 often so you can point out things or whatever, you're less at risk. That being said, though, I'm not going to keep listening to stuff over and over again that I know isn't good for me. But that being said, every time there was a new star on the rise or whatever, I would take note, especially if they were talking about something good. XXX Antasius or whatever his name was there. He passed away recently, but he had some, his music was, he had some songs that were very, very kind of like old rap, or giving out that message that the old rap used to do. But then there were songs that he had that were, new age uplifty kind of shit. I guess maybe it's just me tearing it apart and seeing that in those songs, but another artist just passed away, and his name was Juice WRLD. And on I just think it was Tim West World or something like that, he did a 1 hour freestyle, a rap freestyle. This is a 21-year-old black man from Chicago, and he touched down. He was living in LA, bought a place in LA, but he's from Chicago, and he went back to Chicago for whatever reason. I don't know if it was this weekend or last weekend, but it was sometime recently, and he had a seizure. And he was awake during the said seizure, but after his seizure, he passed away. And I guess he was bleeding from the mouth or something like that during the seizure, so I don't know if he hit something, but, and seizures, epileptics, I don't know if he was epileptic or not, or just taking a seizure, because a lot of people can take seizures from taking certain drugs. He did rap about doing drugs a lot. A lot of people say that's because now he sold his soul, he was part of the Illuminati, blah, 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 all that fun stuff. And I'm not going to say that's true or not true, because there's no way for me to fucking know. I do know, though, that, I have my stepson who was epileptic. I've taken at least 2 grand mal seizures so far. My brother-in-law, who is older than that, he's in his 27, who's taken many grand mal seizures. And he's got a lot of different complications, some very big ones that, but nobody I've ever known has actually passed away from a seizure like that, especially if they're coherent after. But I'm not here to start a rumor saying, someone else killed him after, because whatever. He did have some songs where he said he was going to live past 21, blah, 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 blah. Anytime you're going to write something in a fucking song, you're rolling the dice. I don't know if he was into this stuff or not, but writing down stuff that you want to come true is a big part of what I teach here. In fact, most recently, I already said this in one of my last videos, one of my buddies, he took that part, and instead of, he asked me, because he didn't do any sigils, he just wrote everything down, and things started happening for him, kind of like Grant Morrison talks about. And there's another comic book writer who also went on record saying the same thing happened to him, very similar to what Grant Morrison says. So I'm not going to go as far as to say, well, this is what happened. This poor young rapper wrote down that he wasn't going to live past this age, and then boom, lo and behold, he ends up passing away, because that'd be very insensitive, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to think that that has an effect. However, I'm not going to say it doesn't have an effect. So anytime you write and say things like that, everybody listening, make sure you go back and you either change it, because say you say it out of a fit of rage, or you write something down because you're very upset and anxious, and because you're in a polarized moment. Because God knows, like the last 2 weekends prior to this is the reason I keep reporting that I haven't gotten a fight this weekend, because 2 weeks in a row, 7 days apart, Sunday I got in a big fight with my wife, the next Saturday I got a big fight with my wife, and both times I would say some very irrational, bad shit caught up in the moment. And you can argue that there's a dark force on this planet. You can argue that there's evil entities on this planet, and I'm not going to tell you that there isn't. I seem to think and try to make the point that these dark thought forms, entities, things that we see, feel, perceive, or that affect us, actually come from us and everybody who's ever lived. Because anytime you ever put enough fear emotion into a negative thought, you create this thought form, and if you don't take your personal responsibility and fucking get rid of that negative thought form, then you are unleashing it to your family and your house. If it gets out of your house, you are unleashing it to the world wide. Okay, so if this young artist who's got lots of influence, lots of people listening to him, listening to his lyrics, all hear and he wrote down something like, I'm going to die, I'm not going to make it past 21, and then he has a seizure, and then something happens. Well, I don't want to say that that's why it happened. I'm not even going to say that someone else killed him because he's saying uplifting lyrics, whatever. But if you go back into the past and there's some artists that died before certain ages, a lot of them, you'll see a lot of them saying this person predicted their own death. Well, is it a matter of them predicting their own death, or is it really a fact that they caused their own death by saying that they were? And I'm guilty of this too, because it's something I had to go back and switch once I started learning this stuff. But I used to say, I don't want to live past, I think it was 60 something, the age of retirement. I don't want to live past that, because by the time you get to that age, you're going to be all blah, 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 blah. And I've said that numerous times, Now, it wouldn't be enough to be like an affirmation, but the fact of the matter is that I put into existence that I wouldn't live past a certain age, and I said it numerous times. So I've literally went back and rewrote that down to make sure that that doesn't come into effect. And any other things, restrictive, limiting things about my death, mortality, or anybody else's that I can know that I've stated, said, written down, I've had to go back and rewrite something that counters it. So there's two accounts of the same thing happening, and then this way there's two possibilities at the very least. And hopefully what I hope happens even more than that is that, I countered it. I stopped it from actually happening by rewriting something more relevant, something more recent I wrote down, and, I actually put the emotion into it and all that. Because when I was saying those things about me, I don't want to live past, because when people, it was always around my drinking, my smoking, doing drugs, people telling me I should stop, because you're not going to live a long life. I'm saying, well, it's not going to kill me right now, because I know multiple people that smoke, drink, and do drugs, and they're in their 50s, so. And I'm like, okay, then maybe I die by 60. And so what? I don't want to live past that, because even if you're a healthy person in your 60s, the odds of you not getting a disease or something is very seldom. So I used my rationality while I was trying to, say it's okay for me to do these things. Drugs, drinking, and all that shit, basically. And, I actually, to me, I made some pretty good points. But so I had to go back and I had to counter all that shit, basically. But then I see something like this, where, they're talking about, people are talking about, these sites talking about him, saying he wouldn't live past 21, other people saying that, and how there's an agenda, he had to promote popping pills and all that. But, one of his songs were called Lucid Dreams. So this is somebody with a little bit of knowledge, at least, about something, a little bit about New Age stuff. And, the thing I like the most about this guy is I watched an interview with him on the Breakfast Club, and he literally talked about how he would like to go back to writing his songs, but he can't, because once he started freestyling them, that's, he can't go back to the old way, because what happens is when he's freestyling them, the songs he freestyles and writes down in like 15 minutes or creates in like 15 minutes, because Lucid Dreams is one of his biggest songs. And on that tape, he thought the other song that was going to be big was the song called Moonlight, which wasn't so big. But just as a side note, the two songs, Moonlight and Lucid Dreams, those are some pretty New Age themes. But point is, he wrote Lucid Dreams in about 15 minutes and didn't expect it to be very big. But it's already after he tried hard on other songs, such as Moonlight and other songs. And then the song that, he just had his subconscious wide open to and got created, came from his subconscious, was one of those that he didn't think was going to be big, was the one that resonated with most people and most people liked. And, he didn't care which one made him big. He was just happy that he got a $3 million deal with Interscope. But in that same interview, he said that, some of those songs where he's writing, it's because he talks about God coming and talking through people, talking through artists. And then he said that's how it feels like for him after he starts freestyling, after a certain point, it's just not even him saying it anymore. It's like stuff that's deep inside of him coming out through his subconscious. And it's very similar to what I do when I'm on here. When I start going on a topic and I don't really know where I'm going to go with it, because sometimes I don't even have enough information on it, but the channeling process takes over, and then I start learning a bunch of stuff. And, he talked about that with a therapist. You go to a therapist, and just by talking it out, you end up working it out by talking it, acknowledging the problem out loud, and, you figure out your own problems, basically. So this kid, this rapper, Juice WRLD, was very interconnected with his other side, with his subconscious mind. Now, yeah, you can say, well, his subconscious mind talks about girls, bitches, fighting, guns, and all this shit. Well, yeah, he came from Chicago. He had a hard life. You can't say that that's not going to influence him. He grew up listening to rap, having to hide rap. He also talks about the fact that he had ADD. And, you know, he was forced, his mom would give him Ritalin because that's what he had to happen. He had to have Ritalin, but he hated the way it felt, you know. 15 minutes after he took the pill, you know, the first 15 minutes he'd be himself, talking, funny, everybody liked him. And then after that, all his personality would be completely gone. And then he wouldn't eat, he'd be irritated easily, but couldn't do anything about it. And, you know, he wasn't comfortable in his skin. Got to high school, and then people were trying to buy his Ritalin off of him. And he was like, wow, you people actually want this shit? What the fuck? And that's something I know all too much a little about. But point of all that is it's unfortunate that we're losing these young stars, these young celebrities, these young artists that could actually do something and help change the world. But it is what it is, and like I said, I don't want to start a conspiracy about him being killed or whatever. But I do want to just point out the fact that, as a lot of other people have shown with different artists, how they predicted their death, quote unquote. Well, I want everybody to start thinking that maybe it's not so much a prediction as whatever you say into being, whatever you write into being, is something that, you know, especially when you get a bunch of millions of people's minds involved in it. You know, people, if you write it in a song and you spit up that song and you got people vibing to that song, putting their emotion into that song, someone connects with your stuff on a deep level. Holy fuck. Someone connects with your stuff on a deep level. Sorry, I just found one of my not amulets, but it's a sigil I made out of tin for Jupiter. I just found it. I haven't been able to find it in a long time. It just popped up. But anyways, but if you write something such as what age you're going to die at in a song, and you have people vibing with a song, whether it's a good happy song or a sad, probably most likely a sad song. So most people's putting their fear and their anxiety and their emotion into your song, listening to it. Well, not only is it your mind saying that, you're telling your body that you're going to die at this age or whatever the case is, and you put emotion into that for your body, but everybody else's are doing that, and it's not doing it for them. It's because they hear a song saying, I'm going to die at 21. It's not them they're thinking they're going to die at 21. It's you. It's the artist that created it. Their mind is going to say that this person's going to die at 21. So you got multiple people's minds hearing what age you want to die at, or you say you're going to die at, and then when it happens, it's not a wonder. But I haven't seen that many seizures in this day and age, anyways. You know, because even way back when, we have accounts of people taking seizures, and those people were like shamans and shit like that. We have accounts like that. So even way back when, seizures didn't kill people, but it was more likely to kill someone if it was a grand mal, you know. Whenever, you know, a few years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, but it didn't always happen. In this day and age, for something like that to happen is unbelievably unheard of, but it does happen. I mean, he wasn't in an airport. It's not like he was near a hospital, but he got rushed right to a hospital. Normally, the airports aren't far from the hospitals. But anyways, I don't want to beat this to death. I got to get into the next part of this, Peterson versus Brand. And the identifying the self and your identity. What's better, to keep your identity, to work on your identity, or to lose your identity? But I just wanted to throw that out there because I want to say my condolences do go out to his family, loved ones, all his fans. I don't like seeing anybody pass on too early, especially if it's someone I thought could actually help make some big change. But it is as it is, and we celebrate death. We don't mourn people's deaths. He's gone to a better place, and arguably that could be why he's gone now, because, you know, he did the good he had to do, and now he gets to go enjoy something better. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So now, after all that being said, I'm going to get into what I want to get into. So, the identity. Now, first off, before I even get into identity and all that, I want to say, and I think I made this point before, but just in case whoever's listening now hasn't heard it, or, you know, they forget. But the reason I listen to Jordan Peterson, as well as, you know, my new age stuff, from, you know, like Ralph Smart, Infinite Waters, to the magical stuff, to you know, Birch, to Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton, and anyways, all this different variety of people is because that's what my that's what my system, if you can call it a system, is made up of. Basically, I follow the curriculum from Kabbalah and the great work of self-transformation by Liam Thomas Christopher. Okay, but I've also read Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden. And so I take a lot of tips from there. And between those two, but mostly the first one I said, the Kabbalah, the great work of self-transformation, okay? Between those two, I have a bunch of different daily practices, monthly practices, that I have to do, that keeps me balanced. And, but more so, especially when I heard Frater saying, because if you get into doing the curriculum, basically, if all you're taking in is magic, then if all your input is magic and occult and all this, then all your output's going to be that. And that certainly was the case for the longest time for me. Continuously, preaching to my wife and my kids and trying to teach them what I know and this and that. And, it wasn't fair to them for me going around because, I didn't have any. I mean, at a certain point, I started getting some of my manifestations to happen. But, especially first in the beginning, I didn't have anything happen, right? I was just going around telling them what has happened to other people or what I've learned about. And, it's not really fair to do that. And so I finally been able to stop preaching so much to them. But this is in part the reason, right? Because he said you need to take up a hobby or something else that isn't magic so that all your input isn't on just magic and magical systems and whatever you're learning, so that you don't drive people crazy with that knowledge. And because the fastest, if you're trying to tell somebody, well, this is the way, this is what you should be doing, it's what everybody should be doing, but you're driving them crazy by that, and it's going to be very hard for them to get into that. Even if down the road they decide oh fuck, something is wrong, we need to change. Well, they're not going to want to do the shit you've been preaching about because you drove them crazy with it. But Peterson is a way to bring me down from the clouds, okay? Because if you listen to a lot of occult stuff and, even the Kabbalion and different things like that, you could start having your head too high up in the clouds, realizing that this is all, whether you think it's computer simulation or all in the mind of God, which is basically the same concept, just like, aliens could be the angels or, doesn't matter. Point is, he grounds me, okay? Because if I listen to too much stuff about how, we need to meditate and to manifest stuff and this and that, and, we create our life as we go, it's very uplifting and it's very helpful, but it can also make me kind of just be stuck in a daydream all the time and not really down, because I have regular, mundane, 3D fucking problems here on this earth. So when I listen to all the stuff that keeps my head high up in the clouds, then, I don't really care about my problems. But then I come down here and then my wife starts bringing up the problems, and then I could start fighting with her instead of just realizing that she's got valid points. I'm in both these realms. I'm up in the sky, but I'm also here on the ground. Therefore, I have to be part of both these realms. And Peterson does that for me, okay? So I don't want to tell everybody they should listen to Peterson, that he fucking is your other half to make you balanced or anything like that. However, if you, you need to have balance in all things in your life. So you need to find something or someone similar to his message potentially, or whatever the opposite of whatever you're taking in possibly too much of. If it's an issue for you, if you don't have an issue, if you have your life well balanced, then props and good for you, and you don't need to do this. But I listen to Peterson because he is the other half, in the same way as we need to get rid of our identity. And that's what the occult stuff teaches us, to realize that we are not our identity. We're not a person, because the word person comes from persona. Persona meaning the mask of, and the Greek is actually, the personas were the masks where they would speak out of in the first forms of theater and all that. But now we've so far from there now that we're all persons, but really a person is a persona, personification. It's the person you're trying to be. It's the mask that you're wearing, basically. So we need to lose that mask, because the person, Corey LeBlanc, who has all these three-dimensional problems, and my name is on all these different fucking contracts that I have to pay so much a month to and all this shit, okay? Well, that's not me spiritually. So when it comes to my spiritual practice, I have to leave that persona. I have to leave that persona behind, okay? I have to leave it behind. I have to not deal with it. I have to not focus on it. I have to just, I have to
have to get in touch with my soul, with my subconscious mind, okay? So in some sense, you could say your conscious mind is the Corey LeBlanc, or for me, for my example anyways, would be Corey LeBlanc, and my subconscious mind would be the other being, which I have a name for, which I've named, and it's actually my magical name, because the magic would happen through that, because my conscious mind can't, my conscious mind, Corey LeBlanc, can't do anything, can't do the magic, right? All I can do is physical stuff. I can walk from here to there, I can lift weights, I could, skateboard, I can do things through my conscious mind. However, even some of the things like walking that you do consciously, basically that's rooted in your subconscious mind. But anyways, when it comes to the magic, the healing and all this stuff, it has to be done through your subconscious mind. Now, some people do have, innate healing abilities and this and that and stuff like that just by their touch. But that's because they have a better cross communication with their subconscious mind, most likely, and, have, worked on things or have familiar spirits around them or ancestral witches around them. Or anyways, it can get complicated. But the point is I am both those things. I am both my identity that was given to me that I have used for all these years up until I got into magic, and I am also not this identity. So by solely saying I need to get rid of my identity, when it comes to my ego and the part of the ego where it's it wants to be right all the time and it wants to start fights and stuff like that, that arrogant part of the ego, yes, you have to lose, but that's not all the ego is, at least not to me anyways. Like I said, my ego, my conscious side is supposed to be there to protect my subconscious side, because my subconscious side is vulnerable in the way of it's the powerful kind, and whatever it sees, whatever it hears, it believes is just that. It doesn't have the discerning quality, a capability. It can't discern right from wrong. It can't discern true from false. It can't discern anything. So for me, my ego or my conscious mind, which, the ego isn't all the conscious mind, but it is part of it. A reptilian mind is also on that side of the brain. But it's there to protect my subconscious mind from anything that means to do it harm, whether it's on purpose or by accident or just something that, just won't serve it whatsoever. But all I'm trying to say is that both are needed. So once again, for this battle between, let's say Peterson and Brand, because Brand believes he has to get rid of his identity, lose his identity, lose the self, because he is more than just his self, because, all the things his person has done a long time ago, is with that person still, or at least in his mind, all the bad things he's done in the past is attached to that person, and he has to, lose that self, basically. Whereas Peterson believes to work on yourself, work on your identity, bring it down, take on responsibility so that you have meaning in your life. Because if you're the type of person who doesn't have meaning and doesn't know why we're here and doesn't understand the meaning of life, well, the best thing you can do is take on responsibility, whether that's a job, a family, kids, whatever. You take on that responsibility. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning your life has, because, which is a valid point, because without responsibility, you don't have any meaning. And it certainly is true. When I wasn't working, I was only taking care of my daughter and all that, which taking care of my daughter was responsibility. But before I went and actively took on this job and faced my fear head on, everything was going great in my life, yet I couldn't enjoy it because I didn't have anything that I was proud of doing, because even the magics I was doing, I wasn't proud of, my daily temple work, none of that. It wasn't until I took on a fucking mundane 3D, materialistic fucking shitty job that most people in this day and age are saying that we don't actually need, and can't believe that people are working these jobs and blah, 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 blah. It wasn't until I took on one of those that, yeah, I'm tired. I come home, I'm working shift work, which really sucks and all this and that. But it wasn't until I did that I was able to, first of all, my wife got a lot happier. She was less worried, and she was able to start her transformation, which she doesn't even know she's doing, but I can see it clear as day that she's completely transforming, and she's completely doing my curriculum without even doing it, which is a video I'm going to make all on its own, how I had to read the curriculum to do the curriculum, where she's doing it just because of my transformation. And that's something, like I said, I'll talk about later, but it wasn't until then that she had the peace of mind that I'm going to work, I'm willing to work, that our bills are going to be paid, that she can stop and relax and enjoy life. But until then, she wasn't able to enjoy life. But anyways, so all that was just to say basically that if it wasn't for both of and it all depends on how you do your practice, okay, is all I want to say. Now, if you listen to, let's say my podcast, and, maybe the people I mentioned on here, their podcasts or their videos like Frater and Birch, and, every once in a while, let's say you're mostly in the spiritual realm, you're mostly doing the work, and you're not so much watching just information, okay? I guess this information would be more for people who are doing more armchair occultism rather than actually doing the work. Because if you're actually doing the work, then you shouldn't have this issue. And for me, the only time this happens or becomes an issue is whenever I'm either taking a break from the work, from the great work, which I've kind of been doing, not like my daily practice or anything like that. Just I haven't completely started on my newest grade. I just wanted to get used to basically my job and my working schedule and all this, and I didn't really want to add more to my plate and then not basically not continue with it or whatever the case is, or end up stopping the work or the great work or whatever the case is. So, but because of that, because I take a break is basically where I get into the dangers of the armchair occultism, which is just listening and watching information and not doing the work. But that being said, I'm still doing my daily practice every single day. I still do my daily practice every day. The daily practice anyway, God, I'm having trouble talking. But I'm still going forward with what I'm supposed to do daily, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not actually just sitting there not doing any of my rituals, because I know for sure that would be worse than actually by me stopping my curriculum right now and not going forward. That would be worse than fucking than the alternative. Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once here. I'm trying to get my shit ready for work and try to find my fucking keys, get in my bedroom and whatever else. But point I'm trying to say is, if you're only into the armchair occultism and maybe you don't word it that way. Maybe it's like, well, right now all I'm trying to do is focus on, because I feel a pull to occultism. I feel that this is something I should be doing, but I don't really know where or when to start. So you're doing the research to figure it out. And okay, maybe you got some valid points there, but I'd say that mostly it's because you're probably scared to start or to actually do the work. And that's fine. Do your research, but that's where this would come in handy, or this is where this information would come in handy, I guess. This is what I'm trying to say. Because if you're just doing occultism and just learning about it, not actually doing the work per se, then you're going to have to find a balance, because you don't want to start watching watching certain people and being swayed by their view alone. If all you're going to do is listen and watch YouTube videos and audiobooks about occultism, then you're going to need to have a variety, and you're going to have both polarizations. I guess what I'm trying to fucking get at, what I'm trying to fucking say, because if you don't, then you're going to be imbalanced. But for someone who's actually doing the work, then it's not really going to be an issue, because you're going to know. And that's kind of why I don't care what anybody would say or think about the fact that, I listen to Peterson, who isn't really spiritual, but he hits on the psychological, the mind. He references Jung a lot, but he's also a Christian. Blah 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 blah. I don't really care what people think of why I listen to him, and if it's good or bad or wrong or right. It doesn't really matter to me what people think, because I've done enough work up until this point to know why I have to do it this way for myself, and it's because I need that balance. It gives me a balance. By doing this, I actually receive balance through listening to different people's views, because I'm not the type of person that will only take one person's side of the story. I will take both sides. I will take both views. I'm not bogged down or held back by just one view. I can take on both views and not be polarized against one or the other. And that's the beauty of this. But I guess for myself right now with making this episode with Peterson versus fucking brand, which is really identity versus no identity, or I guess fixing your identity, versus losing your identity, which is the episode. Well, I guess I'm making this because I think there's a stigma, and I think there's a view in our beautiful community, which probably really isn't a community, but in our beautiful community, that we have to get rid of the self. Therefore, if anybody was to start listening to Peterson and thought what he was saying was good and ground and sound, and then all of a sudden they saw that interview with Brand, let's say they listened to Brand a few times, Russell Brand, and then they saw that interview, then all of a sudden they thought they had to choose a side. I guess that's possibly why I guess I'd be making this video, because you don't have to choose a side. Russell Brand is not correct, and Peterson is not correct. Just like Frater's not correct, and Birch is not correct. Just like, over and over and over again, I can make those distinctions that, no guru is more correct than any other guru. That they simply are all pieces of the puzzle that we have to grab and take what parts work for us, and the ones that don't, we can leave behind. But it doesn't mean you have to leave behind all the other videos or all the other messages they've done. Because, being someone who's watched a lot of YouTube videos from a lot of different people, gurus, whatever, I can tell you right now that there are a lot of contradicting gurus out there at some point and another. Even the ones that try not to contradict themselves will eventually contradict themselves. And it's obviously not on purpose, but they'll say one thing one time, and then another time they'll say something slightly or completely opposite of the thing they have already said, and it's in a different context. And once again, that's okay. You kind of need that. It's kind of something I look for in a guru. If I have a guru that's all right, meaning all right side is right all the time and anything from the left is wrong, well, that's not a guru you want, because they don't have balance. They don't have any balance. You need someone who's able to see the need, the necessity, the virtue in opposing sides, opposing views, opposing concepts and religious views, and whatever you want to call it. You need someone who understands the utility in that, because if you were too much one way, well, you need to go the opposite way to regain balance, so to speak. And if someone doesn't have that, well, then it's not really good. It's not going to do you any good either. So that's a little bit about what I want to talk about today. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, the reason I'm talking so low is because I just finished work and everybody's sleeping. But I got to finish this episode because it's been a while since I put anything out. So don't mind me. I sound a little hoarse. Yeah, anyways, happens after work. Throat's clogged up full of shit. Just gotta blow my nose a few times and it goes away. But anyways, so the only thing I want to finish off with saying about the identity, whether it's good or bad to keep your identity or not, and I would say you need to do both. You need to find a balance between both, because like I tried to make the point earlier, your identity, your persona is the mask you wear, correct? So the mask you wear is your personification, basically, and the name you're given at birth and the name you have is what you signed the contracts for your vehicle, for your house, all these different things. So this is what anchors you into the material realm, right? Unless you're going to become some fucking monk living in being a Taoist somewhere up in the fucking Himalayas or wherever the case is, unless you're going to be able to completely shun the material world. If you decide you're going to do both, you're going to be a magical practitioner or a witch, and you're going to, still have your material shit, have a house and all this shit, well, then you have to make the choice to have both. That being said, to separate yourself from your identity, from your persona, is going to be beneficial to you. So this is where Russell Brand and many others like him that tell you to learn to lose your identity is where that is beneficial. But whenever you're done your magical business and whatever you're trying to do and your rituals and all that, when you come back to the material world after you ground and do whatever you got to do, well, then you step back into that persona and you go off to work or go pick your kids up or whatever the case is. You have to do both. You have to find the balance between the material and the magical, basically. So they both have valid points. Now, the reason I listen to Peterson is because Peterson talks to people that are lost sometimes, people that may not be into magic or anything like that yet, but being someone who's been studying magic and, sometimes get too high up in the clouds, I see the importance of what Peterson has to say and what he teaches, especially when it comes to grounding someone who gets too high up in the sky, because it is the case that a lot of magical practitioners end up thinking their shit don't stink, and they can do whatever they want, and nothing really matters in this realm, and they either become nihilistic or too egocentric, or maybe conceited, or maybe they turn to the dark side, quote unquote. But I listen to someone like Peterson, who shows you the benefits of the material world, and how to work on the identity, the self, work on yourself. Well, I believe he is more geared towards people who, are lost. Maybe, I know he doesn't want to talk to just men, but his message has helped mostly men. Mostly men in their 30s, which is the highest suicide rate. As of, anyways, the last stats, it was like 30 to 35 was the highest age doing suicide. So that being said, he is a good voice out there for those people to find because they might be walking around aimlessly, not knowing what to do. So someone like him comes along, and these people hear his message, and it's empowering and empowers them. So definitely useful. But I see the benefits of listening to him as well whenever having to ground, and because thinking I can just manifest my entire life, by going ritual after ritual after ritual, as much as that may be true, because we're in this material realm, you can only do one thing at a time. And, if you're currently manifesting some money to happen, well, if there's something else that pops up in the meantime and you haven't received that yet, you know what I mean? Because you're bound by the material world, you have to be in the material realm at the same time. So to just believe that your magical power can handle it all, it probably can, but this takes time. Therefore, you have to have a nice balance. You have to be able to do what you can do through the material realm with your identity. Your identity is useful for something. It's not this useless thing that we had that was created and it was just something, obviously everything that's unbalanced is no good. Therefore, some people that focus solely on their identity and only me, and fuck everybody else, well, that ain't good. And the same or the opposite is true as well. People that solely focus on, well, there is no me. Everybody's seen those videos with Jim Carrey talking about how there is no Jim Carrey, and that's just a personification, and I am not that name, I am this and that. And as much as that information is also true, you have to find that balance, because as much as you're not your name given at birth, that name is useful for certain things, like I said. And as much as you are, you're not only just a name, you are a soul, and you have inherent birthrights to do magical things, to be able to use your mind power to get what you want in this life. Well, that's where getting rid of your identity comes in handy. Therefore, when you're sleeping, when you're meditating, when you're doing your ritual, it's important to be able to break that cord between your identity your personification, your persona, your name, whatever, and become just your soul, your essence, and that's why you quietly sit and you focus on your breathing, or you relax yourself before ritual, so that you can get a message across to that part of your mind. Because you need to realize that you are not just your personification, you are not just, in my example, I am not just Corey LeBlanc. And to be able to affect my reality and put things into my subconscious mind, I have to be able to break that tie with that personification, relax myself, and then before ritual, obviously, and create that cross connection between my persona or my conscious mind to my subconscious mind, my soul, my essence, that part of me that, doesn't think it's all there is. Problem lies is when people don't think they have a subconscious mind, or they know they have a subconscious mind, but they don't think that part is useful for any reason. Well, yeah, they're too much identity, they're too much in their logical mind, and they're not ready to see
how big and how much more important that other part of the mind is. But once again, focusing only on your subconscious mind and trying to manifest things all the time won't serve you either. You might get a few things here and there, but you're going to have nothing grounding you in this realm. Because if we were only supposed to meditate all day long and try to be in the astral and lucid dream and, do these outer body experiences, if that's what we came here to do, then why would we be physical whatsoever? We would just be spirits, where that shit's a lot easier. We came here to have an experience, a human experience, a material experience. But within that material experience, we have to figure out how to get back, how to use our other faculties. And the further along we go, the easier this is getting. The more people coming out here and speaking on it and telling you how to do it, it's just going to get more easy, more easy, more easy. But both of these things have their place. Both of these things are part of the journey, part of the experience, part of the learning curve. You have to learn how to separate yourself from, Corey LeBlanc. What is Corey LeBlanc? Who is Corey LeBlanc? I have to separate myself from that person when I am in my states of, relaxation, whenever I'm sleeping, whatever the case is. I have to get rid of that, because technically there is two parts of me, because the identity was created. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's bad. But, if you're someone who's into the Bible and things like that, there's a lot of people that like to think that, or say that, the story of Adam and Eve is, a simile, a metaphor for, how it was before the conscious mind, before the identity, basically. And the minute they ate that fruit, they were now conscious. And that's why the first thing that happened was they got subconscious, or they got self, what the fuck's it called? Anyways, they realized that they were naked, and they were all worried about their nakedness, and they had to hide, right? But prior to that, they didn't give a fuck. They just was. There was no good, there was no bad, there was no nothing. It's not until you're conscious and you have identity that's whenever you have duality, good, bad. This is what you have to do. This is what you don't have to do. Blah 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 blah. But part of this work, this great work, is to realize that good and bad are subjective, and someone's good is not going to be someone else's good, and someone's bad is not going to be someone else's bad. Therefore, the identity is solely dependent on the person, on their country, on their nationality, on their circumstances, and whatever programming was put in there. So by losing your identity a little bit in your persona during ritual, during meditation, you figure these things out, because you create that cross communication. Therefore, you'll learn how to be able to put any programming in, so that you put the programming into the subconscious mind, and then the subconscious mind puts it into your reality and plays it out for your conscious mind. Therefore, by losing your persona, by losing your identity and being able to speak to that other part of your mind, you can actually control your identity and what you want your identity to do. Therefore, they're both valid, both important. But if you've lost yourself and your identity is, all fucking crazy, and you're on the brink of suicide, or not knowing what to do, or, you're just going to keep doing illegal things, or you have drug problems, or whatever the case is, well, you need to first get yourself in order, yourself in check. And someone who's on the brink of destruction, the first step for them I wouldn't be able to say, well, go home and meditate, 4 times a day, and start doing ritual magic and this and that, and banish, reject, deny. That would definitely help. But first, they have to go see someone like possibly a shrink or some help, or at least talk to somebody and get their shit in order. Realize, what they're doing isn't good, and they have to start making baby steps. But, every step they do to stop the fucking dumb shit they know they're doing, well, the better their life will slowly get. And that's where Peterson comes in handy. He is really, really, and the numbers are there for how many people he's helped over and over and over again. And for me, anyways, he's also helped me, because every time I start going through a dark period, whether it be during my material, my spiritual shit's all good. Everything's going great. I've got results. I'm moving on up. Everything's working great. Something in my material, physical realm, not so good, Well, I listen to him and helps me out. Or the opposite is also true. The first time when I got stuck and I couldn't go any further in my magical, I found him, well, by accident, but he also helped me through that too. So I find he's one of those people who can still speak about, he talks about spiritual, but to him spiritual is psychological more than anything. And most magical practitioners will tell you that the magic is in the mind and the mind is magic. They're both linked, because to perform magic, you basically have to get something into your subconscious mind, basically. So, when you're talking psychological or psychology, well, it's very linked to magic. So someone like him talking about how to focus on your identity and get your identity and focus on the self and get yourself in check, before you start helping everybody else, start helping yourself. You got to fix yourself, and then once you start fixing yourself, it has this effect, and then people start seeing you change or helping yourself. Well, then they start changing, and that's true. And I've heard different magical practitioners say that in other different ways as well. So his stuff is very linked to the magical, but I wouldn't want someone to listen to him and be like, oh, okay, well, he says we need to keep the identity, or we need to keep the self, or focusing on ourself, and the identity is important, so just throw his shit out with, and not listen to anything else. It all depends on how far along you are in your transformation, or if you're depolarized enough to be able to listen to someone, even though you don't agree with what they say, maybe you don't follow that specific direction or those orders, but you're able to continue to listen to them and see if there's anything relevant that they also say. Because to just not listen to somebody because one thing you don't agree with is not going to serve you, and even more, it's going to add to you being polarized, because then you're just going to look for stuff that you agree with, and by doing that, you're never really going to learn anything. So, and this is something I learned, because for the longest time I thought the same thing, that I'm supposed to lose my identity. I'm supposed to detach from it. But going back and reading some of these books, it's detaching from the identity while you're doing your magical practice, and that's part of the work. It's not something they necessarily say to do all the time. It's not always really specified if you're supposed to do it all the time or not. But, you got to think of when some of these older books were written. These guys may not have had jobs, or all their circumstances weren't the same as they are today. So you have to take what they write and apply it to your life, and you may not be able to do everything they say because different circumstances. But all I want to point I want to get across is you have to keep the self, you have to keep your identity, but you have to be able to separate from it, to be able to, because once you think all you are is your identity, then you're going to have problems. But whenever you think that, well, you're nothing, and basically anybody can come through, and this is just a vehicle you're walking around on. Well, that much is true. You're just in this vehicle, you're using it for, 60 to 90 years, and then it goes in the ground, and then, someone else, you go into a new one, basically. And you don't get to keep the identity from time to time, but the identity you have is going to serve a purpose, at least right now, in this realm, especially the way things are at this time. Now, if we were all tribal and it didn't matter if you had a first or last name, or you had to sign contracts and this and that, well then yeah, it wouldn't fucking matter. And if you're going down the path of becoming a sovereign being, and not being a person but being a human being or whatever, you know what I'm talking about with the birth certificate and all that, getting your live birth certificate and all that. If you're going through that process, well then, then it might be handy to do that as well. But you still need to learn and know the difference between both. And once again, the separation is important when doing magic. But coming back into your persona is also important, because therefore, if you don't have a persona, okay, if you don't have this mask, if you don't have this person, Corey LeBlanc, let's say Corey LeBlanc doesn't exist, I get rid of Corey LeBlanc, all right? And, I still keep it to, talk to my family, but within my magical practice, I basically got rid of it. And I'm trying to put stuff into my subconscious mind to manifest. Well, I'm telling my subconscious mind, I want to manifest this, I want to manifest that, I want to manifest that. Well, who's it going to manifest to if I'm getting rid of the persona? Because that's kind of the life hack, is your persona, your name that you have at birth is the one you need to sign on your spells, or the name you need to add this stuff to, right? I made an episode a long time ago about how to name your subconscious mind. This way, when someone tries to do something to affect you, if they use your persona name, it won't actually affect your subconscious mind, right? So it may not be able to be filtered down. And this way, by naming your subconscious mind, by putting only you knowing that name, then only you can put things into your reality through that, it was kind of like this ultimate protection. So that's what I made that episode of. But if you get rid of your persona and you've done it long enough, and it's you've created a habit that you are no longer what your name used to be, then you have no name to tell your subconscious mind, or you have no name or anywhere for your subconscious mind to filter the stuff you're trying to do down into. That's a little complex and complicated, and maybe I can explain it a little bit better. But let's say if you become this oneness and you are no longer your conscious mind, or you've completely detached from it, either way there is a separation there no matter what, because when you're awake, you're using that conscious part of your mind, and when you're not awake, you're using that subconscious part of your mind. So through trance and meditation, you can affect and speak to your subconscious part of the mind, but there always is a split there. There's always two parts of the mind. Therefore, you can't completely separate yourself from your personification. It's healthy to be able to take a break from being, because if Corey LeBlanc is completely stressed and things are going wrong and money problems, this and that, well, be able to go in my room and just disidentify basically with that and sit quietly and meditate. It's going to be completely healing, because basically, I'm taking on that one part of my body I'm trying to connect to, my subconscious mind, to change what's going on. But you can't completely detach from that, not in this realm, not the way things are right now. Therefore, you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to understand that you are not your persona, you are not the person that, the name you were given at birth, but you are, and that part is useful, and you kind of need that name to continue to do your magical works and shit like that. In the same sense, focusing completely on your identity and thinking your identity is also your subconscious mind, and that your subconscious mind is the one doing the magic, and not your subconscious mind, and not the thing that keeps getting reincarnated. Well, that's also wrong. So I probably did a shitty job of clarifying that, but being how late it is and how tired I am, I'll probably have to come on tomorrow and reiterate and say a few more things about that. But I'm going to leave it at that for tonight, so I don't keep getting further and further from the point. But anyways, I hope everybody enjoyed, and have a great fucking night.
Hello, the microcosmic orbit is what we're going to be talking about now. We start off with the concept of the human being. You may recognize this creature. It has feet. It has a nose, an eye, a mouth, with a tongue, and it also has various energy channels, meridian lines that run through the whole thing. The two ones that we're interested in today, the one that runs up the back, this is called the governing vessel, or the dew meridian. It runs from the base of the being all the way up, and then it goes internally down through the front of the spine. And there, back at the base of the being, it flows into the red meridian, otherwise known as the conception vessel. And the red meridian flows up the front of the body to the root of the tongue, and then it goes internally and flows down inside the front of the spine. And there it flows into the meridian at the back. So drawing this in a more diagrammatic form, what you see is this. Up the back, internally, up the front, internally. So you've got this, it's almost like an infinity sign. And this is what's happening in the normal course of life, without us doing anything to change it, or to interfere with it, or to moderate it in any way. However, when we want to generate extra energy, we then use what's called the microcosmic
Power
orbit,
on.
or the small heavenly
Bluetooth
cycle,
pairing.
by connecting the tongue with the roof of the mouth.
Bluetooth connected.
We cut out the middle flow. So what happens then is this.
Bluetooth
The
pairing.
energy that flows up to moderate it in any way. However, when we want to generate extra energy, we then
Bluetooth connected.
cosmic orbit, or the small heavenly cycle. By connecting the tongue with the roof of the mouth, we cut out the middle flow. So what happens then is this. The energy that flows up through the back channel instead of going down the inside of the front, by the connection of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, it flows into the front channel. And it reverses the flow of chi, the energy in that channel. So instead of the front channel flowing up, it's now flowing down. And instead of going in this figure of 8, it's going in a circuit. And it's that circuit, that circulation, that orbit that's called the small heavenly cycle, and which we know as the microcosmic orbit. Now, as it flows through this orbit, it passes through a number of points, chakras, energy centers, points on the meridians, from the base through the sacrum, the door of life, T11, the 11th thoracic vertebrae, T5, the 5th thoracic vertebrae, up to C7, the 7th cervical vertebrae, up to the occiput, the J pillar, through the crown, the mid-eyebrow, and then down the front, the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the navel, the sexual center. Back down to the base of being the perineum. Now, these are not just little pinpoints in the energetic circuits of the body. They're great whirling vortexes of energy. And this begins the energy grid, the energy network, which feeds the meridians, which feeds the organs, which enables us to use the same amount of energy in a more efficient and more effective way for better health, a longer life.
This program is called the Taoist Microcosmic Orbital Energy. Before we begin, there is a diagram on the screen before you right now. I'd like for you to relax and examine the points along with the numbers 1 through 14. Follow the circuit that is being created by the points and numbers right now. Just seeing this diagram will help you during this exercise. Perhaps speaking aloud or with your inner voice, you can ask your unconscious mind to remember and recall this diagram at a later state for you. Now, let's begin. Please ensure that you are in a comfortable position so that you can relax and be most comfortable with your arms, hands, and legs uncrossed. And if your feet are on the floor, ensure that they are flat And if at any stage you wish to emerge from hypnosis before the session comes to an end, all you need to do is count from 1 to 5 and open your eyes. You can either count out loud or to yourself. Each time on 5, you completely emerge from hypnosis. So right now, take a nice, slow, deep breath in. That's it. And gently hold it for a moment or two. And then, when you are ready, exhale slowly. And as you exhale, allow for your eyes to be comfortable. I'd like to remind you that you are. And as you take each breath, your eyes become heavier and sound heavier, as though there are weights on your eyelids. You respond, keeping them heavily closed, instructions, even when you try to open them. And that's okay to you, because it takes you deeper. Notice that you do not have into a relaxation. For your now, just be aware of your breath. Be aware of the parts of your body that move as you breathe. Aware of the temperature of the air that you breathe. Each time feel each breath cool your body from your head to your toe. As your chest rises and falls, allow your subconscious mind to take over the rhythm of your breath, almost as if you're watching yourself breathing. As we continue, I'd like to ask your unconscious mind, which I know you can imagine your breath going deeper and deeper now for you. And when I say a deeper breath, I don't necessarily mean a bigger breath or a larger breath. It simply means a breath that goes deeper, a breath that relaxes you more and more, so that maybe you can imagine our breath reaching to the tips of your fingers and your toes. And as you find a level of breathing that is right for you now, maybe it's the same level of breathing as you've chosen before, when you've allowed yourself to relax. And allow yourself to concentrate on your right hand right now, so still and comfortable in that position right there. Become aware of how heavy or light it feels, or perhaps somewhere in between, whether it feels warm or cool, or somewhere in between, whether it feels perfectly still, or even the tiniest of movements in your right hand. Just experiencing that right hand right now. And of course, we've left out your left hand. Become aware of how your left hand feels right now. If it feels heavier or lighter, warmer or cooler, or identical. And as the hands of time have ticked past, all there is left for you to notice right now is your breathing. How it has become steadier, maybe slower, that's right. And you didn't even think about doing that consciously. It had to begin to guide your conscious mind to become aware of the sounds that you notice around you, so that with each new sound, or any sound that what else is happening unconsciously right now that you are consciously thinking about doing that. Perhaps you are noticing the difference in frequency to which you've been swallowing. Maybe noticing a gentle fluttering in your eyelids, or the tiniest of jerky movements in and around your head and neck areas. All things that are happening unconsciously without your conscious mind having to think about doing right now. And in a moment, I'd like to ask your subconscious mind to take you as deep as you can go as I count from 10 to 1, allowing for you to enter deep hypnosis on a number between 1 that I count, that your subconscious mind chose steps down the long staircase. As I count from 10 to 1, your subconscious mind will take you to the deepest point of relaxation that you can go. While I'm counting, each step would allow leading you down deeper into a beneficial state of hypnosis, leading down to the part of you that knows deep levels of relaxation. Finding the places in a moment where you begin walking down the steps of relaxation in a pace that is conductive with enhancing, altering your as well as mental relaxation. As you step down each step, you may count the steps to yourself, 1 at a time, exhaling as you take each step, or you can just enjoy yourself, taking the steps of deeper relaxation as you listen to my voice, counting from 10 to 1. Now you are safe and protected, allowing each muscle and nerve in your body to images having any letting go, so calm, so deeply relaxed. 9. Relaxing mind and body together, wonderfully comfortable, each step taking you deeper. 8. Starting perhaps to notice that gentle connection between mind and body, letting go with each step. 7. Creating your own kind of heaven, breathing out to track easily, steadily, so calm and at ease. You expect and begin to anticipate flowing through your body, letting go slowly, comfortably, calmly, way down. 5. And with each outward breath, saying the word calm to yourself, saying the word inwardly to yourself. 4. Feeling the feeling of calm flowing through and within you, permeating all around so that it feels like it is coming from deep inside. Calm, so tranquil. 3. So free to be gently and easily calm, so at peace. 2. Continue to relax and to let go, gently drifting down into peace and harmony of body and mind, deeper and deeper. 1. All the way down to a deeper, healthier level of mind. Now, imagine yourself in a large room, dimly lit by candles slowly burning as the room glows and gently flickers in a warm orange hue. Each step that you take echoes along the walls as you slowly walk to the center of the room. As you come closer to the center of the room, you see the most comfortable chair in front of you. You find in front of you the most comfortable chair that you've ever seen before. The perfect chair that you know would be just right for you. You know that the moment you sit in this chair, you'll sink right in, sinking right into deep relaxation. Imagine what it's made out of. Go ahead and choose what appeals for you. What do the legs look like? What is it made out of? Is it made from gold, wood, or something different altogether? How about the way it feels on your skin? Is it cold and silky, or warm and soft, or something in between? However you see or sense this chair to be, it's just right for you. When you are ready, go ahead and sit on the comfortable seat. Perhaps you've already find yourself sitting in it, and that's okay. And as you sit in the chair, you notice how wonderful it feels to sink right in. That's right. How your breath, and as you continue to sink into your comfortable chair, rhythmically, it takes you deeper and deeper into a calm state of relaxation. And the calmer you feel, the more your eyes begin to get heavier and heavier. So heavy that you just allow yourself to close your eyes. In a moment or two, I would like to ask your unconscious mind to begin noticing the subtle sensations, energy as you begin in your body, notice the subtle sensation in your body, your area just mind below your diagram you saw immediately. Allow for your conscious mind to focus right there on the area just below your navel. Numbers 1, that's 14 in the body. The center between your hips, right below your navel, is a lower dantian. You call the lower. How does it feel? 1. Does it feel tense or relaxed, or somewhere in between? Notice all the sensations that is radiating from your lower dantian. Perhaps even the most subtle of sensations. Does it feel tense or relaxed, or somewhere in between? Warm or cool, or somewhere in between? Expansive or contracting, or somewhere in between? Maybe you may begin to notice a slight tingling sensation or a pulsing sensation. As you take each breath, the more you focus on your lower dantian, the sensations grow from your lower dantian expands. Perhaps you may notice the sound of your ki as it spirals around you and spiraling. Be aware of the direction that it has a certain color. Is it spiraling towards you may even find that you are perhaps to the right and move your ki. Allow for your ki right there to spiral around in your lower. And as you begin to guide and in a moment, I'd like for you to take your hand to go and grasp your ki. Spin it in the direction that it is allowing ready for the flow of your ki to go ahead and imagine it now. And as as you spin it, notice that you're doubling the speed, brighter, feeling the sensation as you spin amplify it and magnify each time you spin it around. Go ahead and spin it again. That's right. And in a moment, I'd like for your unconscious mind to be aware of your sexual organs, ovaries for the sexual testicles for number. This is the sexual center, number 2. And when I say now, guide and move the spiraling key down to the sexual center, creating a feel your key flowing and coursing down to your sexual center, creating a strong and radiant link between your lower dantian and your sexual organs. And as you feel the ki from your lower dantian flowing down to your sexual organs, begin to become aware of the area down at the base of your groin. This is called the perineum. We will come back as you guide your ki from the lower dantian down to the sexual center and down to the perineum. Guide and allow for your ki to continue flowing down to your legs and down all the way to the soles of your feet. This is the center in which you absorb energy from the earth. Remember how comforting and good it is. Such a nice feeling, so calm and relaxing as your ki flows from your lower dantian down to the soles of your feet. And when you are ready, continue moving and guiding your ki, drawing energy from the soles of your feet, slowly at first, back up to your legs, to the perineum. And this time, be aware of the area just below the base of the spine, your sacrum center, the sacrum. You may feel, and as you guide your ki to the base of your spine, the effects you may feel something, moving your ki, perhaps a surge of energy or a tingling sensation you notice beginning to rise from the base of your spine. Energy center. You may feel a slight twitch in your body. That's okay. Continue drawing up along the spine to the point opposite to your navel, the door of life, and up along the base of your skull, the jade pillow. Continue drawing this energy up to the top of your head, the crown. Number 9. Now move this energy from the top of your head, the crown, down to the middle of your eyebrows, the third eye. 10. You may notice for a moment as your ki spirals and swirls, allow your ki to gently soothe and massage your third eye, noticing that each time you exhale, the spiraling ki grows stronger and faster. And as it spirals faster and stronger, it allows for more clarity of perception and thought, becoming brighter and brighter, allowing it to linger there for a moment or two. And as you guide your ki to take its time to soothe and rejuvenate your third eye, I'd like for you to take notice of the tip of your tongue, and when you're ready, raise and touch the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth. That's right. touch and release. Again, touch and release. Good. Then lightly touch the roof of your mouth and gently leave it there, so still and comfortable. That's right. You may begin to notice, sense, and/or feel an electric or tingling feeling on the tip of your tongue. As you keep your tongue there, gently touching the roof of your mouth. And now, as you allow for your ki to soothe and massage your third eye, guide your ki from the third eye to the tip of your tongue, where it is meeting with the roof of your mouth. Continue moving your ki down from the tips of your tongue, down to the middle of your throat center, opening, clearing, and energizing your throat center. Continue down from the throat center, down towards your heart center, allowing it to swell, energize your heart center. Continue guiding your circuit of ki just a little further, right below your chest, and just right above the stomach, your solar plexus, right in the center where it indents. That's right. Allowing the energy to spiral and radiate. You know that your ki works in wonderful ways, healing and rejuvenating your body, mind, and spirits. And as you allow for your ki to linger there, right there in the center, radiating and spiraling, feel and sense there a small, bright, radiant sun shining out as you feel its warm, radiating, penetrating, and pulsating all throughout your body. Your entire body becomes brighter and more vibrant. That's good. Now, when you are ready, bring your ki, your energy from the center of your chest, back down right below your navel, your lower dantian. That's right. Now that you have connected the circuit of flowing ki around your entire body, going through and passing through each sacred center, I'm going to help you open the pathways even more and allow for this energy to continuously flow like a river in a circular motion without having to stop, in a continual flow of energy circulating throughout your body. And allow for your unconscious mind to guide you through the previous points that you went through as your unconscious mind. When you are ready, again from the lower dantian, as you allow down to the sexual center, that's right, into the perineum, down the legs into the soles of your feet, back up to the perineum, 5, then to the point below your spine, the sacrum, 6, up along to the middle of your spine, the door of life, 7, continuing up along the spine to the base of your skull, 8, from the base of your skull up to the top of your head, the crown, 9, down to the third eye, lightly touching the tip of your tongue to the plate of your mouth. Your energy moving from the third eye down to the tip of your tongue, 11, down to the throat, 12, and to your heart, 13, and just a little further to your solar plexus, and then down back to your lower dantian, 1, from your lower dantian down to the sexual center, 2, to the perineum, 3, down to your leg, to the soles of your feet, 4, then back again to the perineum, 5, and then to the point below your spine, 6, the sacrum, up along your spine to the midpoint of your spine, the door of life, 7, continuing upwards to the base of your skull, 8, up to the crown, 9, and down to the third eye, 10, moving the energy down from the third eye to the tip of your tongue, 11, down to the throat, 12, and to the heart, 13, down to the solar plexus, 14, and back to your lower dantian. Just imagine again, flow of ki, lower dantian around you, to the sexual center, around through each center, to the perineum, just know that it is down to the legs, to the soles of your feet, back up towards the perineum, and towards the sacrum, up along the spine to the base of your skull, up towards the crown, and down to your third eye, to the tip of your tongue, down to your throat, continuing down to the heart center, and to the solar plexus, and back to the lower dantian, to the sexual center, to the perineum, down to the legs, to the soles of your feet, back up towards the perineum, and towards the sacrum, up along the spine to the base of your skull, up towards the crown, and down to your third eye, to the tip of your tongue, down to your throat, continuing down to the heart center, and to the solar plexus, and back to the lower dantian. Go ahead and take a moment to go around the cycle of 1 through 14 5 more times, just letting it easily and smoothly pass through each center without having to stop. Each cycle going rhythmically around. Now, first cycle. Second cycle. Third cycle. Fourth cycle. Fifth and final cycle. Now, the pathway of your ki is completely open, not needing to stop at each point, It is flowing continuously like a flowing river. Now, when you are ready, collect the energy at your lower dantian, allowing it to accumulate and grow, vibrant and powerful like the sun. Getting ready to cover your navel with both palms. For men, left hand over the right, and for women, right hand over the left. Collect and mentally spin the energy stronger and stronger, faster and faster outwards from the navel, growing larger and larger. Continue spinning this energy more and more as I count
8
from 1 to 36.
36
1
and 26
2, 3,
are
4,
guidelines
5,
to follow
6,
to ensure
7,
the success of this
9,
ancient Taoist
10,
practice.
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Now, spin it in the opposite direction as I count from 1 to 26. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26. Feel the spiraling energy growing stronger and stronger, brighter and brighter. Now, take a deep breath in and exhale slowly, feeling the energy spiraling in your navel, coursing throughout your entire body like a flowing river of light. And as you bask and feel this amazing sensation of feeling so good and radiant, slightly raise the corners of your mouth and
You've
smile,
already noticed that you have been smiling.
and bring that smile down to your liver.
You've
and
already
smile
heard about this practice.
down to the stomach and
This
smile.
practice of your organs smiling.
Also, you take your time to thank your unconscious mind. You can either say thank you aloud or imagine yourself embracing your unconscious self as if it were a person or a creature. This is all part of nurturing a relationship with your unconscious self, a relationship with yourself. Now, you will remember all the steps which you took in the session. Even when you are awake,
entire body,
you will continuously
not paying
and
attention.
unconsciously,
Maybe even while you are sleeping.
you will consciously and unconsciously remember how to recharge yourself through moving and guiding your ki from your dantian and through the 14 sacred centers which permeates all throughout your entire body, energizing you from head to toe.
Next time
Now, as I count from 1 to 5,
and
you will
easier,
awake feeling
better
refreshed and energized,
as
keeping within
your
you
quality
all
of
that you've
hypnosis
learned and
becomes
felt,
better
benefiting
and
you
better.
every day,
Your state
in every
of
way
relaxation
for your highest
becomes
good,
deeper
whether
and
you are
deeper.
awake or sleeping.
And as your state of relaxation
Now,
becomes
when in a
deeper
moment,
and
when I
deeper,
count to 5,
this
you
exercise
have full
becomes
control,
easier
flexibility, and
easier.
coordination throughout your entire body, from the
Your
tips of your
subconscious
toes
mind integrates
top of
new
your head,
learnings that is
to the
harmonious
tips of
for
your
your
fingers
body,
and
your
thumbs,
mind, and your
to your
spirit,
shoulders,
as it
and
illuminates you
feelings
from
of
within,
lightness and
radiating
your heaviness return to the true
increasing
and
and
correct
magnifying,
perspective,
getting better
putting back
and
all
better
bodily
forever,
sensations
as
as
long
they should
as
be.
you live.
1. Position yourself back from hypnosis, remembering and recalling what was left, right and above, and below you, remembering and recalling the features of this place. 2. All sounds are back to their correct perspective and back to their correct importance. 3. You're keeping and bringing with you all the wonderful benefits of this session, all the good things during the hypnosis session you incorporate and integrate into your life, all the intended benefits and desired outcomes of the session are surely sealed in, as they are kept and integrated into your unconscious mind. 4. And finally, when I count to 5, you open your eyes fully refreshed and energized from the session and out of hypnosis. 5. Eyes open, awake, feeling fully refreshed and energized.
Your body's fucking amazing. Here's a reason why. But first, thank you to Mantak Chia. The reason I and most people here in the West are aware of this dynamic. So what is this? The microcosmic orbit is the flow of chi along certain pathways of energy in the human body. The history of the microcosmic orbit dates back to prehistoric times in China, and the underlying principles can be found in the I Ching, the go-to book on Chinese wisdom. In traditional Chinese medicine, the human body has 12 ordinary energy channels and 8 extraordinary. The most important of them are Du Mai and Zen Mai that control the work of all the other channels. The microcosmic orbit is the root of chi during its constant circulation along these channels. So for thousands of years, this practice was highly esoteric and kept secret away from the uninitiated out of fear for the power one grows to possess. And so it's strongly advised that your morality is in check if you don't want to ruin the lives of those you care about. There are countless sources showing you how to do this, but let me give you an idea. Sit straight on the edge of your chair, occupying about 1/3 of the seat space. Tuck your chin in slightly so your neck is straight. Focus your awareness on your abdomen while breathing with it, as opposed to your chest, that is. Place your hands just below your navel. Imagine and feel inside your abdomen is a hot red ball. After a minute or two, you should start to feel the energy collecting here, at which point, while your entire body is relaxed, send the energy up your spinal cord by subtly contracting your anus while maintaining awareness of the chi movement till it flows into your head, at which point it is ready to travel down the front surface of the body. To facilitate the cycle, gently touch the tongue to the roof of the mouth and relax the entire front surface of the body until it falls all the way to the perineum. This essentially is the microcosmic orbit. If you struggle to feel these sensations or feelings in general, there are a few things to consider that can significantly deplete people of vital life force. Top offenders being hunger, tiredness, and excessive ejaculation. So what are the benefits? Let's talk benefits. Through centuries of discovery, the Taoists found the microcosmic orbit meditation produced profound physical, mental, and spiritual transformations. Decreased stress hormones, reduced blood pressure, better muscle relaxation, increased oxygen saturation levels due to deeper breathing, improved memory, clearer thinking, flushes out stagnant chi from areas that can block, such as lower back, upper back, prefrontal cortex area, aka headaches, balance yin-yang energy. It's useful to remember that in ancient China, your doctor was considered a failure if you became sick. The best doctors train their patients to prevent illness by maintaining a high level of health. Increased intuition, increased intimacy, creativity, problem solving, flow state, remaining calm in stressful situations. Another reason for ill health is said by many Taoist teachers to be lack of Jing or sexual chi. The microcosmic orbit runs right through a person's sexual center. By moving chi to this area and stimulating the Jing, it becomes enhanced. Once it is enhanced, it is then circulated in the orbit, which even further enhances its quantity and quality. Taking meditation to the next level, yoga as it's meant to be. Whatever mission you're on in life, this practice will help you get there. Opening the orbit is the first step towards the seemingly mythical powers of sexual kung fu, energetic inner alchemy, and other incredibly powerful advanced energetic meditations. Live longer, have better organ health, enjoy life more, be more vital. That's what this type of meditation is designed to do. Have been developed over thousands of years to do. Balancing the chi flowing through our body is known to greatly enhance the mental, physical, and spiritual aspects of our life. And increasing the capacity of energy flow allows our physical body and mind to have more potential to work with for even greater benefits beyond what an average person will experience. According to Chia in his book, Awaken Healing Light, at progressive stages, dedicated practice of this ancient esoteric system eliminates stress, nervous tension, massage the internal organs, and restores health to damaged tissue. He adds, according to ancient sages, long-term practice beyond 2 years, and most effectively, if practiced lifelong, reportedly could retard the various degenerative changes associated with old age, i.e. skin changes, senility, slowed reaction time, impaired memory, ambulatory impairment, and frequency of various diseases common at old age. A diligent practitioner often lives to 90 years of age and remains healthy and alert, is able to jog, run, climb mountains with ease, and continues to enjoy life more fully than most people. So to close, some of these things might seem unbelievable, like something from science fiction, but let's suspend belief just long enough to experiment and play, because if there's any truth to this, why would you not want to help yourself get what you want by accessing more of yourself? So every day for 30 days, practice 20 minutes a day and see what happens.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Their self is not the truest thing, that there is something greater. If I would give my life for another person, it's almost an acknowledgement of oneness, the temporalness of the individuated self. And we all work so hard to achieve individuation, and I'm sure much of your work as a clinical psychologist is guiding people towards it. But for me, it's just a temporary resting place, because having had the kind of experiences of personal humiliation, annihilation, success, failure, decimation, all of these things, that what I've been led to and what I continue to struggle with is how do I serve? How am I of service?
Well,
how do I help people?
I think that is the solution to the problem. It's like, I don't think the solution to the problem of inequality is sociological. I think it's psychological. I mean, partly what I'm
Why? Because it's closer to essence? Because it's more essential? Or because a society has to be a reflection of individual psyches or collective psyches? Why is it psychological?
I think the temptation towards resentment and destruction that's associated with sociological approaches to inequality is too great, and that as a consequence, those movements tend inexorably to become corrupt and destructive. Because I think Orwell put his finger on it when he said that middle-class socialists don't like the poor, they just hate the rich. And that hatred, I think that hatred gets the upper hand in sociological movements. I think that the best approach to ameliorating inequality is to strengthen the individual. I mean, and that's what I've concentrated on doing. Like, we have this program, the self-authoring suite, and there's a component of that helps people write an autobiography, and another component that helps them write an analysis of their personality, and another component that helps them write out a plan for the future. And we've studied the effect of having people write out a detailed plan for their future. And it's a proper plan. It's like, okay, look, you get to have what you want 3 to 5 years down the road. You get to have the friends you want. You get to have the family you want. You get to have the career you want, the education. You get to take care of yourself properly. You get to withstand the temptations of drug and alcohol abuse and other sorts of impulsive pleasures. You get to make productive and meaningful use of your time. Okay, what does that look like for you? Write it out. What does it look like? Just, you need a vision. And then you need another vision of how terrible things could be if you let all your bad habits get the upper hand. And we've had people do that in an experimental situation. And mostly they were college students. And the consequences of that, there were 2 consequences. One was general, which was that university students were about 30% more likely to stay in university and got grades that were about 25% better. This is a walloping effect. But even more interestingly, and this is the coolest thing I think that we ever discovered as in our psychological research, we did this research in Holland at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, at the Rotterdam School of Management, and we ran business students through the future authoring program for multiple years, so several thousands of them. And we stratified them by gender and ethnicity. Pretty rough cut, men, women, and then Dutch nationals and non-Western ethnic minorities. Okay, and so the performance was like this. The Dutch women were at the top, then the Dutch men, then the non-Western ethnic minority women, then the non-Western ethnic minority men. And they were behind the Dutch women they showed about an 80% decrement in performance. Really quite catastrophic. 2 years after they did the future authoring program, they were ahead of the Dutch women. It just blew us away because it was a perfect indication of the fact that you can use a psychological intervention to ameliorate what looks like a sociological problem. And so I think the right solution, and this is what I've been saying over and over in my lectures and in this book, 12 Rules for Life, and this is why I think it's become so popular. I said, look, you were right. You said earlier in the last question, well, you can't ignore the group classification problem. You know, there's a black experience, there's a Latino experience, there's a female experience. It's like, yeah, that's true. But you have to decide what level of analysis you're going to make primary. And I think the primary level of analysis is the individual and the psychological, rather than the group and the sociological. And I think if you put the individual level first, and then you alluded to that, because it was like an intuition that you were bringing forward, which was your intuition has been that the right level of progress is made at the level of the individual. And I think that's true.
I thought that's the only level where I have personal authority.
Right. And also personal responsibility. Because here's the thing. Here's the rule. How about this? Don't recommend any changes that you wouldn't suffer for if they failed. How's that? And that's the problem with large-scale political action. It's like, well, here's how we should change things. It's like, well, they changed them. It's, well, it fails. Doesn't bother me. It doesn't hurt me. I'm not involved in it. It's like, you should be careful when you try to change things to make sure you suffer for your own stupidity.
Of course, Jordan. But that also plays into the hands of conservatism because, you know, when you said like that left-wing change tends to be sort of potentially destructive. Yeah. You know, these are
not just left-wing change.
Yes,
there's right-wing radicals too,
and even and also there is sort of conventional politics and the ecological impact that it has, the inequality, which are like whilst you continue to say that the problem of inequality is an anthropological, biological, cosmological, physical problem.
It's a really deep problem.
It's a deep problem. And for me, whenever you get near a problem that has that level of profundity or ubiquity, the solution can only be spiritual. We have to access the transcendent in some way to look for solutions. And although that sounds a little airy-fairy...
So why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? I mean, I'm not disputing that, but you obviously believe that.
I do believe this.
What drove you to that conclusion?
I've been driven to this conclusion by the experiences of personal failure and personal limitation, by the failure of individuation, by the failure of my own grandiosity, the failure of my own ego, the failure of fame and power and money and sex and drugs, the inability of them to reach me in the belly of the beast, deep, deep, deep down where the Leviathan is. These cures, this alchemy was redundant. And what I have realized, I think the spiritual journey for me, the hero's journey, and I'm using reference points in which you are an expert and a professor, is that the death of the small s self and the realization of the capital S self means become a servant of good. Use your abilities to generate the maximum amount of love, the maximum amount of kindness and compassion, and to be alert to where I can be of most use. Now, for me, that can be incredibly limited because I'm still a deeply egotistical, narcissistic, flawed, failing individual. But what my focus is, what my intention is, what I'm trying to learn to become in this journey of self-realization is a compassionate and loving man. And
But you also said you added something to that too, though. Well, you added useful to that.
Yeah, useful.
You're right.
Not useful. You're finished.
Well, that's it. So the best definition of Christian compassion that I ever read was useful and generous. Right. Useful and generous. Right. And so I would say the conservatives promote the useful end of the distribution, and the liberals promote the generous end. And those things need to be brought together.
And I would say, and given that you yourself have said the problem, for example, of hierarchies exists on a far broader spectrum than the political, that the narrow, like when you were saying, like on the whole, left-wing Democrat or Republican governments or left-wing, right-wing governments have produced a similar amount
the same amount of inequality.
For me,
that's sad. I'm not happy about this. It's a sad thing.
Doesn't it suggest also, Jordan, that the range of solution that we're being offered is too limited?
Right. Yes, I don't think it suggests that. I think it indicates that. Yes, and this is why I think that the problem of inequality has to be taken with more seriousness than it's being taken.
And the role of the individual, and obviously you would focus on this as a clinical psychologist, is paramount because I kind of believe when I think about sort of fluctuating, vivid, grotesque right-wing phenomena such as Donald Trump. I don't blame people for voting for Donald Trump. I understand why people feel furious. I understand the emotion of anger and rage. And I suspect that all that plays out in the zoetrope of the material realm is a reflection of the activity in the psyche, activity in the emotion. How could it be otherwise, except for, of course, you say it occurs in lobsters and nature. So that suggests it's even more profound, deeper, more essential than that.
Or that the psyche is deeper than just human.
Right, the psyche is all, the universal conscious and unconscious mind. So I suppose what I'm thinking is what my interest is how can I manifest benevolence?
Well, let me ask you a question.
Go on.
What do you think that you've done in the last year that's good?
They are mostly small things.
Okay, well,
acts of kindness.
Well, you have a daughter. You have a good relationship with her, so that seems to be a good thing.
That's been beautiful. That's been in fact, that is hugely significant. My newfound ability to live what one might refer to as an ordinary domestic life, my willingness to let go of other people's perception of me, these things have all been hugely significant. And my sort of, I would say, my dedication to sort of self-improvement in areas that could still be regarded as selfish is one thing, still an improvement to sort of take exercise to look after myself. I'm like drug and alcohol free for like 15 years, and it's at this point that the epiphanies are beginning to sort of coalesce. The things that I feel are perhaps most important is to let go of self-centeredness when I conduct myself and when I'm not continually thinking what can I get, when I don't look at the outside world as a resource, when I don't think what can that person give me, what can they give me, when I think instead.
Well, I have a chapter on that in 12 Rules for Life, right? It says do what is meaningful, not what is expedient, and to view the world as a place of resources that can be delivered to you. It's in some sense to be expedient, is to take it's to take the approach of short-term gratification, something like that.
Yes.
It's self-centered.
It's materialistic too.
Well, it is materialistic, but it's not optimal, and it's not wise. And the reason for that is that it actually turns out, like if we had a continuing relationship, I would want to try to do a little bit more for you than you do for me. And I could do that even purely selfishly, say, because if I did a little bit more for you than you did for me, you would want to keep interacting with me.
How does that... All right, so because me and you, I think, get on relatively easy. We've found a frequency to communicate on. But say someone like the woman...
We're both high in openness.
High in openness is a good service. Now, what about the woman on Channel 4 News who seemed more agitated and stuff? Me...
Well, we were actually having a conversation. We're trying to have a conversation that's oriented towards discovering something.
And you think she had a sort of a series of linear bon mots and epithets, and she was just dropping them regardless of what came back?
Oh, definitely. That's exactly what happened, except once. There was once
when you're being mean to me, and she was a bit like confounded.
Yeah. Well, when I complimented her on her ability to put people on the spot, when she said that was the wrong thing to do.
Yes. Now, you're an academic, you're a clinical psychologist, but in this moment, do you not feel, and like it's a question you could easily pose to me, feel like, right, I just want this, like that's the person that's been in front of you, that's the world in that moment. I don't think you were hostile to that person, I may say, but like, do you not feel like in that moment, it would be of value and of service to nurture that person?
Yes. Well, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, very smart friend of mine. His name is Wayne Moretsky. He's quite the character, Wayne. But he watched, and I've had people watch what I've been doing for the last 18 months, lots of people, and they report on what they think about what I'm doing. And so I asked Wayne about the interview, and he was happy about the fact that I conducted myself with a certain amount of calm and detachment. But he did say something very interesting. There was the kind of the culmination of that interview was where Kathy was challenging me about my right to say things that might offend someone. And I said essentially, look, you've based your whole career and this interview on that right, and congratulations to you. That's what you should be doing. And then she was taken aback by that. And I said, gotcha. And she was sort of flustered, and she said, well, yeah, you did. And Wayne said, you could have, instead of saying gotcha at that point, you could have taken the opportunity there to expand on that opening and to try to have a genuine conversation.
You could have done. Yeah, I'd like to chastise you, along with Wayne, for not doing that Christian thing.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Okay, so I thought, and I thought about that a lot. I thought, I think there were limitations in the format. Like by that time, we were about 25 minutes into the interview, so it was coming close to an end. And, sometimes being funny, because I think it was reasonably funny, it was reasonably witty, sometimes that's okay too. Well, that's why comedians are useful, because they say funny things. But
this just in.
Yeah, well, right. Well, hopefully they do, and hopefully they can get away with it, right? And I think that's often an extremely effective conversational maneuver.
Because actually, as a matter of fact, you said something about comedy. This is another thing. I'm just throwing a few things at you now because, look, the reason I do this is because I started doing a degree at a university called SOAS called Religion in Global Politics, and one of the main things they taught me there, or one of the things I've intrigued me, is the first thing they show you is this bit of Borgia, this bit of literature by Borgia, where it's some story, I can't remember it, called the Chinese Emperor's System of Taxonomy, where he showed, and the story's about.
Yes.
I love that gear.
Yes.
And it's sort of, and part of the courses they talk about who gets to determine what words like natural or power, or who gets to determine how those terms are allocated. I dig that. Who gets to determine what's deemed religious, what's
that's
deemed
why
political.
I objected to Bill C-16, because I wasn't going to let the radical leftists decide the linguistic playing ground. And that's what they were trying to do. You see, their rationale was, we're on the side of transgender people. I thought, no, you're not. You're trying to control the linguistic territory.
In a sense, like, this is where this conversation is, it parallels the conversation I had with Sam Harris. Because with Sam Harris, what I found myself saying is that, why are you so worried about this one particular issue of zealousness or extremism when it seems that power is actually situated elsewhere? Seems to me that, and whilst, in that instance, I suppose because that was the instance that came your way, you as you term it, the radical left, imposition of certain rules around language that you objected to.
Yeah, that was the reason for me. Plus the fact
but broadly speaking, but you have also continued to furrow or plough that furrow, haven't you? You have continued down a sort of a line that seems like teleologically sensible with what happened there. Like, it continues to, like, I know what you're saying. Like, I agreed with your analysis of the word provocateur. If you don't, if a person is provoked, if they're not provoked, you're not a provocateur. So it's a difficult label to apply to anybody. But it seems to me that, when people say, young males are particularly sort of attracted to your work, I do see that this is a time where males need guidance, and like where there isn't the kind of elders, customs, initiations, routes to masculinity are in short supply. I can see that there's a real value in that. But I also feel that in this time of social contention, identity politics being part of it, and conflict, that ideas that promote unity and the immolation of those kind of boundaries, it feels to me would be particularly and especially valuable. You know?
Well, again, but I think the right way to do that is to concentrate on the individual. And so let me answer that in two ways. The first issue is that it isn't self-evident that the reason that what I've been talking about has been attractive to young men, that might be like a fluke. And it might be a fluke because almost everybody who watches YouTube is male.
Yeah.
So like, if I look at my YouTube audience, it's 80% male. But that's true of YouTube audiences in general.
So it's just a typical YouTube audience.
Right. And so what's happening...
Is that your intuition?
Well,
because I feel that there is something about
I think it's
maleness.
more complicated than that. But I do know that since my book has come out, I've been watching the demographics of my public audience, that more and more women are coming out. So it's now to about 65-35 from 80-20. And more older people are coming out too. So I think a fair bit of it was a consequence of the fact that most of my exposure was to the YouTube audience, which happens to be mostly men. Now, I do also think that there is a particular crisis with regards to what might be described as proper pathways to masculinity. I also think that's at play. So I think there's two factors. But I don't think, and Kathy Newman kind of went after me about this, she said, well, if you're directing your message towards young men, which I wasn't, but assuming that's the case, isn't that divisive? And I would say, well, I don't think it is divisive because, first of all, the masculine in women also needs to be developed. It's very, very important. And the people who are the enemies of the masculine in men are also the enemies of the masculine in women. So if you overprotect your sons, let's say, you overprotect them in part and weaken them because you're afraid of their masculine energy, you're going to do exactly the same thing to your daughters. So
a female child would similarly be disempowered.
Oh, definitely, because the thing is, and this is another thing, is that I am a psychometrician. That's technically my job, and we study the measurement. Well, and it's a truism of psychometrics that men and women are more the same than they are different. It's funny because I've been sort of positioned as someone who is constantly on about the differences between men and women. But men and women are more the same than they are different. And what that means is that the development of masculinity in women, perhaps it's not as important as the development of masculinity in men, but it's damn important. It's like it's a close second. And so if people are pushing down masculinity as a virtuous mode of being, then it has a detrimental effect on both sexes.
Everybody, I agree with this. But you would say that determinally and biologically that there is a thing that is masculinity, and that thing, masculinity, is present in both females and males.
Definitely.
But I think again one of the challenges that this argument appears to be built around is a sort of hierarchy around those traits. Masculinity being synonymous, for example, with power. Oh, here's the thing I wanted to bloody ask you. Check this out, because it was I said it on a YouTube video on my own the other day, and I thought, wonder if this stands up to scrutiny. Let's give it a bit. Check this. I said, in Sweden, they're banning sexually provocative advertising. It's the kind of thing you hear a lot about, the objectification of women. And I said, of course, I support that because as a male being subjected to lots of sexualized images of women has, to a degree, affected, particularly when I was younger,
Well, the logical conclusion of that is pornography, right?
Yes.
And that doesn't really seem to be a good thing.
It doesn't seem to be a good thing, I don't look at pornography anymore. But pornography, I think, is very corrupting, corrosive influence. For me personally, it's not something I want to be involved in. I said this. Check this. Yeah. I goes. I feel the use of the female in advertising and commodification in general is the perverted desire to worship the feminine. The negated and neglected feminine has found its expression through consumerism and commerce because it is not being properly honoured socially. What do you reckon? I made it up.
I would have to think that. I'd have to think about that a long time. I would have to think about that a long time.
It's a good idea, though, isn't it?
It's an idea worth thinking about for a while.
If we have essential yearnings, if we have e.g. if in indigenous cultures we would have deities to represent gender or certain energies that are subtler than gender, if there is a sense that socially those energies are not being expressed or honoured, as you have implied with male pathways.
That's definitely the case. So one of the things that I've often thought about ideologies is that they're like parasites on religious structures. And if you're thinking that the movement of feminine imagery up into the consumerist world is an analog, or is at least in part a consequence of not having a symbolic place where that attraction can be expressed, I think that's probably right. It's like in the United States, is the first family tends to be turned into king and queen.
Yeah.
Because there's no place for that symbolic projection.
Yeah, the template requires it.
Yeah.
And I heard once an analysis of the Soviet Union after the revolution that it mimicked the monarchic tyranny that preceded it, just in a different format.
Right.
And it seemed, that sort of certain
they
energies.
had their holy trinity even, right?
Yes.
Mao, Marx, Lenin.
Amazing.
Or Mao, Marx, Stalin, depending on the trinity. But
and some would argue that that Christianity couldn't take hold in Latin America until they embraced the pantheism of the saints and the figure of the Virgin, until that in certain cultures the Virgin had to be elevated because there isn't a place in the Father, Son, Holy Ghost for the divine feminine.
Yeah, that's a Jungian idea. Definitely.
Yeah, is it?
Definitely. That's an original idea of Jung's. Is that
cool?
The Trinity is missing a quartile, and sometimes that quartile is filled by the figure of the devil, and sometimes it's filled by the figure of the woman. So it's like the houses in Harry Potter, right? There's 3 good houses, and Slytherin is in the bottom quadrant. It's a reflection of the same kind of Mandela structure.
That's pretty cool.
So it's very cool.
You have to.
It's very cool.
Have a place at the table for the serpent. You have to have a place.
That's what happens in Sleeping Beauty, right? In the Disney movie.
They don't let in that crone.
That's right. They don't invite her to the christening. And so their daughter ends up unconscious. Right? They don't let the terrible mother come to the party. So the daughter ends up unconscious.
In our domestic, normal, everyday, quotidian lives, what is the terrible mother? How does that help us?
Overprotection.
Don't overprotect the baby. Let it fall over a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. You do the least amount possible for your children. It's something like that. That's not neglect. It's nothing like that. It's like the old age home adage. Look, I've seen this lots of times with parents. It's like, maybe you have to get your kid dressed up to go out. Well, it takes a long time if you let your kid do it. It's a lot faster just to do it. It's a lot faster not to have them set the table. It's a lot faster to do things for them. Plus, there's also, and this is part of the devouring mother archetype, is like, if you've devoted your life to a child, perhaps more than you should have, let's say, then it's very difficult to let the child go, because what's there left for you? And so there's this terrible temptation to play, well, I'll do everything for you, but you never leave me. And then for the child to say, yeah, that's right, that's exactly the right face to make for that. That's a very terrible thing. And you see that again in Disney's Sleeping Beauty, where Maleficent has the heroic prince in the dungeon and is laughing at him. Right? She's not going to let him go until he's ancient. And that's a consequence.
Where else do we see the devouring mother? What are some good pop cultural examples of the devouring mother?
You see it in Disney movies all the time.
They've always got one.
In the Little Mermaid, Ursula is the devouring mother. The devouring mother shows up all the time. She's the witch. She's the swamp dweller. She's the evil queen in Snow White.
What's the counterpoint? The fairy godmother?
Yeah, fairy godmother's one. Yeah, that's the positive feminine. And that happens, that archetype manifests itself all over the place as well. The fairy godmother's a good one. And you see in Sleeping Beauty, there's 3 of them, the 3 little fairies that take care of the princess in the forest. They're the archetype of the positive feminine. So you always see, one of the things that distinguishes a religious viewpoint from an ideological viewpoint is that there's always a representation of nature or the unknown. Always. You need one. And if
that's
it's a
Holy
religious
Ghost in Christianity, is it? Holy Ghost in Christianity is the unknown?
Well, in Christianity, I'd have to think about that for a minute. Partly it's the Virgin Mother. It's mostly a positive representation in Christianity. So, and that would be the representation of the benevolence of nature. It's something like that. So that's the unknown. But in a religious representation, you have the positive and the negative aspect of the feminine. That's also the unknown. You have the positive and negative aspect of the state. That's the wise king and the devouring king. And you have the positive and negative representation of the individual. And the reason it's religious in some sense. It's hard to explain why in a very short period of time, but a religious viewpoint always gives you a balanced viewpoint. That's what makes it religious. It's like there's a positive element that's intensely positive, but there's the negative counterpart. And there's a positive... So let me give you an example here. I can give you an example of how this plays out archetypally. The frontier myth that settled the West was essentially heroic individual, positive, bringing the benefits of order and culture, positive, to the desolate, barren wastelands of the West. Okay, so it's positive individual, positive culture, negative nature. Okay, so that's an ideology, but it's a powerful story because it's true. Heroic individual, bearer of culture, barren, desolate wasteland. It's true. But one of the things that eventually generated was a counter-narrative, and that, because it was only half the story, that counter-narrative was the environmental narrative, which was rapacious individual bringing pillaging society into benevolent nature.
And they had to recast the indigenous people that lived on those land masses as savages, not entitled to the same rights as the heroic individual.
Well, and there were actually two competing tendencies in the Western mind. One was the noble savage, so that was the
Rousseau.
Exactly. And the other was denizen, barbaric denizen of the uninhabited wastelands. Those are both archetypal representations.
The romantic idea of the noble savage became some sort of whimsical New Age thing, and the other one, the denizen barbarian, became justification for genocide. All right, listen, we've got to wrap up because I can feel the technological angst in a variety of ways. But Dr. Jordan Peterson, or Professor Jordan Peterson, I don't know how to big you up enough with your prologue. Thank you, or title. Thank you very much. I've really found it fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
Have you enjoyed it?
Conversation. Yeah, it was really.
It's good,
I
wasn't
really
it?
appreciated the invitation. Would demonstrate their wealth and also updated to me. Like one example is that the left, for example, tends to lay the blame for inequality at the feet of the Western hierarchical structure and capitalism. That's just wrong. Inequality is a problem, and it's the proper concern of the left, I would say. And it's a proper concern, because inequality is a deadly problem. But it's way more serious than anything you can blame on capitalism. Every single society that's ever been studied, for as far back as people are able to study, suffers from the problem of inequality. I work with this Native American tribe in northern Vancouver. I'm a member of the tribe, actually. Now they're called the Kwakwaka'wakw people. And
say that again. That's not the sort of word you can get away with just saying once.
Kwakwaka'wakw.
Whoa, that's a tough bit of native language right there.
It's a tough one to spell.
Because the problem with me is I'd say too many quas.
They're brilliant artists. They're part of that West Coast native tradition of art, which I think is a great tradition.
What type of art is that?
Exaggerated eyes. Almost it's kind of a hallucinogenic art in some sense, and the figures, the animals are very graphic. They're very graphically portrayed, I would say. They have large almond eyes and bright colors, and the art's very beautiful. The Haida art is probably the best known variant of it, but the Kwakwaka'wakw is similar to that. And they used to have this ceremony called the potlatch, and what you would do in a potlatch is usually you had to be comparatively wealthy to have a potlatch, and you would give away everything you had. Whoa. And that was their solution to inequality, because what would happen in the native societies, just like every other society, is that as time progressed, everything would become owned by a very small number of people. And that's a bad recipe for long-term stability. So they would have these giant parties that would often last weeks, where the rich would demonstrate their wealth and also, I suppose, their commitment to their own provision, their own capacity to provision the future by giving everything away. And I'm only using that as an example to show that the problem of inequality is not something that you can lay at the feet of capitalism. It's a way worse problem than that.
I agree with you, and I understand. But you're saying that capitalism occurs far too late down the line to be the genesis of a problem that's indigenous to human beings. But what about some of these, and I would be very careful too. I have no problem saying I believe in God all day long. I believe in God, but I would be a little more cautious about saying, oh, I agree with this party or that party, because I sort of don't feel that my political views are demonstrated within the sphere of mainstream politics, because they operate on such a prohibited frequency because of the power of transnational organisations, the irrelevance of national sovereignty when it comes to ordinary people asserting power. So, it becomes sort of kind of too complex for me. But what I can see is interesting about, say, even if you take sort of socialism, and perhaps, I suspect or sense that one of the issues you take is its sort of continual annihilation of, like, take out God, then take out man, then take out woman, then take out everything, till all we have is this miasma of meaninglessness.
I wouldn't necessarily put that at the feet.
I just made it up.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily put that at the feet of socialism per se.
What would you say that is?
Well, that's a complicated one. I mean,
is it happening, or am I wrong?
I think it's happened in many ways. I think a lot of that is a consequence of the hypothetical conflict between science and religion.
Do you think that's hypothetical? Or?
Well, because I'm not so sure there is a conflict. There
Materialism and spiritualism?
Be a fundamental conflict, because the world is one thing, fundamentally, right? Everything fits together. Cool. So there can't actually be a conflict. If the religious realm exists and the scientific realm exists, they have to be unifiable at some point. Now, the more materialistic scientists, the more atheistic scientist types like Sam Harris would deny essentially that there's any validity to religious dogma, although he certainly believes that there's a spiritual element to life. So I think that what happened, at least in part, and this is why the work of Jung, to return to Jung, is so important, is that we didn't understand that truth comes in different forms depending on its application. It's a tricky thing. There's the truths that apply when you're attempting to describe the transformations of the material world. And there's the truths that apply when you're trying to determine how it is that you should act while you're alive. And those have to come into alignment, but they're not in alignment right now. And my sense, and this is a sense that's been developed, at least in part from reading the great psychoanalysts, is that fictional accounts, metafictional accounts, even like biblical accounts, which are mythological, are stories about how it is that people should act, not stories about what the material structure of the world is. Like, this is also where the fundamentalists have it wrong, as far as I'm concerned, because the fundamentalists like to think that the account in Genesis is a scientific theory that can be stacked up against other scientific theories.
In short, they are materializing the mythic.
Yes, that's right. And
which is unhelpful.
Well, it's not a help. Well, first of all, it doesn't even make any sense, because the materialist types, in any real sense, weren't around until about 500 years ago, right? This was all established by Descartes and Bacon, and, well, Galileo was another player, but those were the two major players that established the scientific method. There weren't scientists before then. I mean, there were very intelligent people who could analyze the structure of the world. The ancient Greeks were obviously very rational and capable of philosophy, but there was no science until 500 years ago. And so obviously the people who wrote Genesis weren't scientists, because there weren't any scientists. So whatever, and I also think that the world they describe is it's much better considered the world of experience than the world of material reality. And, well, look, here's an idea. You can try this one on for size. I've been trying this on audiences for quite a long time. So modern people say they think the world is made out of things. But if you watch them, that's not how they act. They act like the world is made out of potential. And so they'll even say things to each other like, you're not living up to your potential. You might say, well, what is this potential that you're talking about? You can't. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have a mass. It doesn't have a size. Like, there's nothing about it that has a material element. Yet, you believe that you're not living up to your potential. Everyone feels guilty about that. If someone accuses you of that, you feel bad about it. So then I might say, well, you also live not as if you confront a world of things, but as if you confront a world of possibility. And you hold each other accountable that way, because I could say, well, you're not making all the use of the possibility that's presented to you, because you're not living properly, you're not living honestly, you're not aiming high enough, you're not making everything of that potential that might be made. So what's that potential? Well, in religious stories, that potential, and you see this in the first story in Genesis, is that potential is what God creates order out of at the beginning of time. That's the idea that's expressed in that book, is that there's a potential, whatever that is, and that something acts on it to bring it into reality. And there's a deeper idea in there too, which is a profound idea, which is that the potential, the actuality that you bring out of potential with truth is good. And so there's an ethical element to the story as well. And I actually think that that's a great truth. I do believe that's the case, that the reality you bring out of potential with truth is good. And I think that's one of the most profound discoveries of humanity, the ability to articulate that idea. It was articulated in the first chapter in Genesis. It's a brilliant idea. And it's associated with the idea that human beings are made in the image of God, because God is that which calls reality into being out of potential, but each of us do that as well, in a small way. That seems to me to just be true.
Of course, all things that are in the manifest world were once unmanifest.
Right.
And many of the things that are unmanifest now will become manifest.
And we can choose that to some degree.
We have agency.
Well, we seem to, yeah. So we certainly treat each other like we do. Yeah, well, and you know, if I treat you like you don't have agency, you don't like it. It's not the grounds for a satisfactory long-term relationship.
While we're in the Old Testament, I want to ask you something I saw in the book of Job that seems right up your alley. I looked at this book. I can't remember who wrote it anymore. You may even know. I expect so you will. It was a book of engravings from the book of Job by the British writer and poet William Blake. Mm-hmm. Blake had done this series of engravings based on the trials and tests that Job went through. Yep. In these series of engravings, Yahweh and Job are depicted as sort of identical. You know, they're one's in a celestial realm, one's in a terrestrial realm. At the beginning of the image, Job and his family are depicted in front of the tree of life. The instruments hang in the trees. The animals are sleeping. By the end of the image, after these various trials, you know, after Job has been tested, and we're to assume, I suppose, that there's been this journey of self, capital S, realization through these trials. The instruments are being played, the animals are awake, you know, and there's a sort of a bright future, and there's some sort of astronomical stuff, i.e. the positioning of the sun and moon is somehow meant to be significant also, and the person that wrote this book is a Jungian. Now, the thing that struck me deep, and I've been struggling with it ever since, is there's a moment where Yahweh shows the behemoth and the leviathan to Job, and he says, "These I made as I made thee."
Right.
And then in this Jungian analysis of these engravings, the writer says that God requires of us that we be good, that goodness itself may exist, that there is something beyond but comparable to neutrality in God the Creator, the idea of God the Creator. The image of the behemoth and the leviathan in these engravings is terrifying. The animalism of the behemoth, its musculature, its rawness. The leviathan, sneaky, dark, deep, terrifying thing. This idea of agency and God, this relationship between the unmanifest and the manifest as achieved through an individual's relationship with truth and expression, seemed to me that it was saying something that was right on the precipice of my ability to understand and certainly to convey.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is, well, one of the indications that you're open is the way that you phrased that question. Because there's like 30 things happening in that question all at the same time. And one of the things that creative people do is they throw out like images, because your question was full of images. You're trying to map territory that you don't understand. You say, here's an image, and here's an image, and here's an image, and here's an image, and there's something uniting all of those, but I don't know what it is. It's like, well, that's what artists do, by the way. And so that's a preliminary mapping of unexplored territory. And so we could take that apart a little bit. I mean, one of the things, so Job is objecting to his treatment because, of course, God has a bet with the devil, basically, that he can take Job down and make him curse fate. He basically bets the devil that he can turn Job into Cain. And God says, no. The devil bets God that he can turn Job into Cain by tormenting him. And God says, no, Job's a good man. No matter what you do to him, he won't lose faith in being. That's essentially the bet. And you think, well, that's a hell of a thing for God to do. But then, and Job objects to God to some degree. And so he's got his reasons, man. I mean, because everything's taken away from him. And God says, I made these things, the Leviathan. So that's like the terrible element of nature, and I made the behemoth, and maybe you could say that's the terrible element of society. It's like, how dare you question me? And that's a perfectly reasonable objection. It's like, really, you're going to, doesn't matter what happens, you're going to question God? Really? Well, so God objects to that. And then you although Jung believed that Job actually had the moral upper hand in that description because God behaved rather reprehensibly in having a bet with the devil. I mean, Jung wrote a book called Answer to Job, which is very much worth reading. It's quite a profound piece of work. But then you also wove into the question this idea of the ethical requirement to be good. Yeah. And there's something in that that's unutterably deep, because this is right at the limit of my ability to understand things too, so it's speculative beyond belief. But it seems to me that we are thrown challenges, and that in some sense those are best construed as tests of our ethical ability. So what Jung thought, his idea was something like this, that at the beginning of time people were unconscious, and that consciousness emerged with all of its catastrophes, consciousness of death, for example. And one way out of the burden of consciousness was to return to unconsciousness. You can do that with alcohol. You can do that by being dependent. You can do that by failing to grow up. You refuse the burden of consciousness by becoming unconscious again. But there's another way forward, which is to become even more conscious. So the idea would be a little bit of consciousness is like an illness. But if you can expand that consciousness upwards enough, then it starts to become something that is its own cure. And that partly what your goal is, while you suffer through life, is to heighten your consciousness to the point where everything gets integrated enough so that that's proper medication for the disease of self-consciousness. And Jung believed that was really that was one of the ideas that ran through the entire structure of Judeo-Christianity, although it wouldn't be limited to Judeo-Christianity. So it's more consciousness rather than less. It's more attention. And I think there's something to that. And some of that, see, the other thing you see in psychotherapy, for example, is that when you're trying to lead people forward out of the darkness, let's say, out of anxiety and depression and despair and resentment and bitterness and anger and all of those things, catastrophic interactions with their family, is that you get them to stop avoiding confronting the terrible things that are in front of them, right? So basically what you do, instead of saying to them, you know those terrible things that are happening, just ignore those and find some peace, right? Get your mind away from it. That isn't what you say. You say, turn around and look at them even more than you've been looking at them. It's very paradoxical advice, but of all the things that have been proven to aid people's recovery and movement towards mental health, that's like at the top of the list. Voluntary confrontation with what you are afraid of, or what you despise, even, for that matter. And so Jung had an axiom that he derived from the alchemists, which was instur quellinus invenitur, which roughly meant that which you most need will be found where you least want to look. Which is,
fuck man.
Yeah. Well, that was also his explanation for why people weren't enlightened. Because you think, well, the California approach to enlightenment, to speak, kind of satirically, is follow your bliss. It's like, well, that's easy. If that was the case, everyone would be enlightened. But the Jungian approach is, no. You do what's meaningful and pay attention, follow the truth, and it will take you to the worst place you can imagine. And then maybe there's some chance for enlightenment.
Campbell somewhat revoked that I follow your bliss mantra, though, by saying he wished he'd said follow your blisters. Like what you should follow is the pain.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know he said that.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Well, it's wicked. Put that on the scoreboard.
Oh, that's good.
Like another thing. I know I've been thrown because you've said that I said something that you didn't know, and it's unravelled my entire Weltanschauung. And now I've reached for a bit of German language to pull my way back in. Oh yeah, Herman Melville, he'll help me out. I'm reading this Moby Dick. It smashed my head up, when he says in towards the end of the book, Ahab, when he's hanging out with Pip and stuff, he's really losing it now, but maybe he's finding it too. There's a bit where he talks about will. Who is it that moves this arm, he says? Who is it that thinks these thoughts? If the mighty sun has no control over its movements, what control has Ahab over his thoughts? He's talking about fate and destiny, and these ideas again seem to me very potent, powerful themes. The position
Sure, he struggles with a great whale, right? And that's the dragon of the abyss. That's Moby Dick. It's the hero against the dragon of the abyss. And he's obsessed with it, right? Well, he should be obsessed with it. It's what to be obsessed with is the dragon of the abyss. That's the oldest story of mankind, is that your proper obsession is the dragon of the abyss. That's where the gold is.
Yes, that's where the gold is.
Even though that's where things are most terrifying.
Also a bloody tragic ending, except unless you take Ishmael as the protagonist, in which case Ishmael survives and Ahab, don't ruin it for anyone, dies.
Right. So it's a tragedy. It's a tragic encounter with the Dragon of Chaos. He's a failed hero,
There's two outcomes. He's a failed... And he's lost that limb and stuff, and I'm sure, symbolic.
Just like Captain Hook and the crocodile.
Yeah, they have to have. For me, it's very exciting when I see these patterns of perennialism. For me,
it is exciting
because there's truth. Implicit in it is truth. And now that thing we were talking about a minute ago, where I got excited because I said follow your blisters. The thing I was going to say is there's some sort of maxim I understand in Buddhism of let it burn, let it burn, let it burn. Like take away from me everything.
Right. And, there's the idea is also there in Christianity. So there's an occult interpretation. There's letters on Christ's cross, INRI, Jesus Christ.
What is that?
It means Jesus Christ, King of the Jews, and it was put there by the Romans. But there's an occult interpretation in Latin, which I can't reproduce. But it means through fire all things are renewed. And one of the deepest ideas of Christianity is that you should burn everything off that's part of you that isn't part of that thing that can die and be reborn. Like there's all sorts of baggage that people say that there's baggage that you're carrying. Everyone knows that. It's dead wood. It's like that has to burn off. And that's that's way more of you than you think. It's way more than you think.
Whilst you still haven't said whether or not you believe in God, and I won't keep going on about it because I'm not one of them type of people. It seems to me.
Good to know that.
Yeah. So it seems to me that you revere truth, and it seems to me that you are interested in the truth in scripture and mythology. Now, then what this leads me to is something we touched upon briefly. It's about the role of power and the function of morality and ethics and indeed simpler ideas, terms, if not ideas, such as compassion and goodness. So when, it's interesting to me that you've written sort of an accessible sort of self-help type book that's, clean your room, stand up straight, stick your shoulders back, stuff that, I would not query. The only thing that I feel like I would like to ask you about, because I don't know if I even have a constituency, but the people I find myself talking a lot to Muslim people, young women, self-harming, eating disorders, these kind of, you're a clinical psychologist, so I imagine you have more access to that kind of information and those kind of experiences than I do. I have this strong feeling that I am supposed to make myself available for the vulnerable, for the powerless and for the voiceless. So
that's a fine idea.
This is the one.
The question is, how do you do it?
How do we do it?
It's hard to do it.
Huge bloody question. Sometimes they don't want me interfering in their lives.
There is that.
Majority of the time.
Right. There certainly is that. Well, there's a maxim that's often applied by people who work in old age homes, which is never do anything for the residents that they can do themselves. Right?
They can't steal their own money and have sex with their sleeping body. I'm a comedian.
Very funny.
Don't know why I say things like that. It's paid off over the long run. Yeah. No.
Right. Exactly.
So isn't it
so it's hard. Like the thing about compassion is it's not sufficient to produce solutions. Compassion is an unbelievably useful emotion if you're dealing with 6-month-old infants.
What about?
Because they're always right.
Jesus, they're an arsehole. No, but but what
That's not very compassionate.
You said it doesn't work. No, but what about? What I want to say is, I know you're saying all this thing about sort of one of the essential themes, ideas about the Christ myth being, sort of burn away all that cannot be reborn. But bloody hell, mate, in the actual language, all he bangs on about is kindness, love, kindness, love.
Not in Revelation. Not in Revelation. He's a judge in Revelation.
What? And you're still taking that as what? Books beyond the Gospels, you're still taking as the word of Christ?
Well, I'm taking them as part of the entire corpus of the story. I mean, the reason that Jung thought Revelation was appended to the Bible was because the Christ in the Gospels was erred too much, in a sense, on the side of mercy and not enough on the side of judgment. Because here's
discernment is
there's
important.
There's a technical reason, though. It's like,
we don't want a judgmental Jesus.
Well, you don't have a choice. Because if you have an ideal, it's a judge. Like, you have an ideal. There might be an ideal that you have of you. it's simultaneously your judge because you fall short of it.
I understand this because, funny enough, I was talking to the fellow that taught me meditation yesterday, Bob Roth. So he's a student of the Maharishi, you know that. He said that when Maharishi was asked, what is the one principle, he didn't say kindness or compassion or anything like that. He said discernment. Right. And discernment, which path are we going to follow?
That's
Where is
right.
the attention going?
Yeah.
But
that's judgment. That's why in Revelation, Christ divides the damned from the saved, and most are damned. It's discernment. And what that means in some sense is that there's 100,000 ways to do things wrong and only one way to do them right, or maybe only 5 ways of doing them right. But you know that in your own life, is that there's an infinite number of snares that you can tangle yourself up in. And to find that pathway where everything is balanced, that requires continual discernment and attention. And so you can't have an ideal without it being a judge, and you can't live properly without discernment. But that doesn't mean compassion, and compassion isn't relevant. It doesn't mean that at all.
I've got to ask you something that sort of occurs to me. See, like you, have found myself in different types of controversial situations, various conflicts, and much of the time it's because, like Albert Maysles said, tyranny is the deliberate removal of nuance. People remove. Right. No, I didn't even say that. That's not what I meant.
That's a good phrase.
It's good shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like the thing, right?
The deliberate removal of nuance. Yeah, that's what makes it different than ignorance, because ignorance, there's no nuance in ignorance, but it's excusable because you just don't know any better. Yeah. But when it's deliberate, that's a whole different story. That's very nice. Who said that?
Albert Maysles was a filmmaker. He made like Grey Gardens. He made that I did a documentary with him very briefly, and he made that Beatles movie when the Beatles first came to the States. He made Gimme Shelters. The Maysles brother, they're like old guys now, brilliant documentarians. You can see our crew here and nodding with approval. He invented much of the fly-in-the-wall verite style that's informed subsequent documentary. Tyranny is the deliberate removal of nuance. I worked with him sort of briefly, filming none other than President Donald Trump, of all people. But like one of the things that I wanted to talk about was if I like, this is the thing. I don't like all of the. I don't like the. I agree, or I feel. I don't know what you feel. That one of the neoliberalism abandoned its allegiance, and leftist politics has, in a sense, abandoned the working class, and I can understand their